Chapter 1350. Qi. Somewhere in the center of the Devil Realm, a Tai Chi pattern appeared and a strong wind blew. A pale-faced young man appeared in the whirlwind. His physical strength and divine power were severely overdrawn. He staggered and fell to the ground. Taking a few deep breaths, Suyu sat cross-legged to restore his physical strength and divine power. In his mind, he was calculating the situation. He had provoked the Holy Maiden and the Moonwatch sect, forcing them out of the Saint Realm. It was conceivable that they must be chasing Suyu now, and within 2 or 3 days, they would catch up. Therefore, there was little time left for Suyu to prepare. In addition to the Holy Maiden, Suyu vaguely sensed another equally terrible crisis, which was also shrouding him. This is really a crisis. If so, I need to prepare carefully. Suyu thought to himself. 2 hours later, his physical strength was completely restored, but his divine power was still far away. In other words, Suyu did not have another chance to escape instantly. After thinking for a while, Suyu raised his hand and summoned Yongya Wuming, unlocking the wizard power seal on his body. Returning to his human form from a petrified state, Yongya Wuming took a few deep breaths, and his face was flushed. I almost suffocated to death. Suddenly, he looked up and found Suyu staring at him quietly. His whole body trembled, and his eyes were full of fear. Although he was petrified at the time, he could see the scene of the battle. Suyu had actually fought with the Saint Lady and shattered her finger. Now, he had even escaped alive. This achievement alone was enough for him to be famous in the Empire of Darkness. Yongya Wuheng also saw with his own eyes that the Grand Wizard was subdued on the spot in 3 moves under Suyu's palm. With such a strong performance, even a fool would be able to guess that Suyu was just keeping a low profile in front of him, not revealing his true strength. Yongya Wuheng felt ashamed and blushed. He smiled bitterly and said, Lord Su, if you have such strength, why didn't you tell me earlier? Thinking of the fact that he had treated him as a subordinate along the way, Yongya Wuheng secretly felt lucky that he did not order him to do anything drastic. Otherwise, he would have become a corpse long ago. Wuheng, can you answer a question for me? Suyu stared at Yongya Wuheng, his eyes filled with deep light. Yongya Wuheng patted his chest. My life was saved by you. Even if you ask me how big my wife's, but is, I will tell you. Suyu was speechless. Straightening his face, Suyu said seriously, I want to know, what is the purpose of the sacred faction of the Empire of Darkness coming to the sanctuary? Hearing this, Yongya Wuheng had an unnatural look on his face, but he quickly concealed it. He laughed and said, It's not a secret. In fact, it's just unearthing a creation-level civilization weapon. Suyu's eyes were cold. Is that so? Do the so-called creation-level civilization weapons really exist? Yongya Wuheng's face became even more stiff, but he forced himself to calm down. What are you talking about? The creator-level civilization weapon has existed for countless years, and it is not a secret. This can be known by any master. Suyu stared at him silently for a moment, then slowly stood up and said calmly, All right, take care of yourself. Since he was hiding something and was unwilling to reveal the truth, Suyu didn't need to protect him anymore. So, he decided to let him fend for himself. With that, he took a step towards the dark ruins, murmuring softly, The Empire of Darkness, you've really hidden it well. Wait. Yongya Wuheng was shocked and hurriedly called out. However, Suyu had already disappeared. Yongya Wuheng looked around with a sad face. When he recalled that there were wizards everywhere, he couldn't help but feel remorseful. A few hours later, Suyu arrived at the dark ruins. This was the place where Suyu was transmitted to. He clearly remembered that there was a toad of level 4 deity called the 7 Poisons demonic toad. He glanced around and found that the dark ruins were empty. There was no sign of the 7 Poisons demonic toad. He floated down and came to the palace where the 7 Poisons demonic toad was hiding. There were messy traces of battle, as well as residual blood and venom. Sure enough, Suyu stared at it. Something big is going to happen in the ruins. The 7 Poisons demonic toad had identified its target and never gave up, except for Suyu. At that time, the seven poisons demonic toad must have sensed something and was afraid to go out. On the myriad bone mountain, the fierce guardian spirit of the frozen river bottom, the nine-headed devil saint, came out with all its ghost bats, but the nine-headed devil saint was nowhere to be seen. Where did it go? Perhaps it was captured by some powerful being like the seven poisons demonic toad. This powerful being must be what the seven poisons demonic toad was afraid of. Suyu squinted his eyes, revealing a penetrating light. Rather than saying that this relic is an exploration, it would be better to say that it is a trap. Dong! As Suyu was talking to himself, a strange sound came from the depths of the palace. This palace had been occupied by the seven poisons demonic toad for a long time. It emitted intense poisonous gas all the time, so the hall was filled with poisonous gas. Just standing here, Suyu felt his skin prickling. If he went deeper, even a level 6 deity would not be able to bear it. Logically, there could not be any living creatures in the depths of the palace. That movement really aroused Suyu's vigilance. With a thought, Suyu hid his figure and used the fragment of the rules to hide his breath. Then, he quietly walked into the depths of the palace. Sure enough, the deeper he went, the more poisonous the gas became. There were muddy swamps everywhere. The swamps also emitted strong, corrosive poisonous gas, which could corrode a deity with a slight touch. After walking for 10,000 feet, Suyu finally saw the deepest part of the palace. There was a seven-colored lake inside. The waves were rippling, and the fragrance was overflowing. It was completely different from the stench of the poisonous gas outside. Just as Suyu was surprised by the situation in the palace, there was a sudden ripple in the lake, and a beautiful figure suddenly emerged from the water, enjoying the pleasure of bathing. Her long black hair fell softly behind her back, wet like pearls. An exquisite and beautiful body, like a sculpture of art, appeared in front of him in its natural form. Looking at her jade face, it was exquisite and peerless, almost the same as the mermaids of the mermaid tribe. Suyu was slightly stunned, not because he was stunned, but because he was surprised by the identity of this woman. There were fluctuations of divine power and sorcery energy in his body, which was extremely strange. Who is it? As if sensing the strange gaze, the woman suddenly shouted coldly. She turned her head and saw a man with the head of a dragon and the body of a human staring at her blankly. Apart from being surprised, she felt embarrassed and annoyed. She grabbed with one hand, and a mass of floating light emerged around her body, covering her snow-white natural body. However, her pretty face, which was covered with coldness, had no intention of hiding. After leaving the colorful lake, the woman did not say anything but attacked Suyu with a vague, murderous intent. Suyu's face was calm as he looked her up and down. You are not a creature of the ancient god realm, nor are you a wizard. Who are you? The woman said coldly. I will tell you when we are underground. A divine power pierced through the sky and headed straight for him. Suyu's eyes flashed, and he took out the divine feather of frost and waved it gently. Suddenly, a shocking gust of wind suddenly descended, not only blowing away the divine power, but also lifting the woman up and smashing her against the stone wall. She groaned, and golden blood overflowed from the corner of her mouth. The divine feather of frost of the Xuen nation of the Northern Territory. Who are you? The woman said coldly. Suyu walked over, pointed the feather at her forehead, and said lightly, Now I am asking you, who are you, and what are you doing here? Did you see the seven poisons demonic toad being taken away by something? The woman stared at Suyu, and her expression quickly calmed down. She said in a neither humble nor arrogant manner, I am a citizen of the heaven-defying empire who accidentally entered the ruins. I found the scent of the spiritual pool here, so I came here. As for the seven poisons demonic toad, what is that? Hearing the woman's insincerity, Suyu frowned but did not bother to ask more. This woman was only a level 6 deity. If she knew that this was the lair of the seven poisons demonic toad, she might not dare to come here. Be honest. Suyu walked towards the colorful lake, thinking, how could there be such an abundant spiritual pool in a place with poisonous gas? After thinking about it, Suyu shook his sleeves and rolled up a pool of water. Just as he was about to reach out and grab it, his heart skipped a beat, and he suddenly looked back at the woman. He saw that her eyes were full of expectation, staring at Suyu's actions. When she found that Suyu had turned around, she immediately pretended that nothing had happened. There was something wrong with the pool water. Suyu immediately stepped back. The pool of water that was rolled up lost its foil and spilled on the ground. Sizzle. Suddenly, the ground was corroded and emitted green smoke, quickly melting a deep pit. At the same time, it emitted an incomparably foul smell, exactly the same as the poisonous gas of the 7 Poisons demonic toad. Could it be the venom left behind by the 7 Poisons demonic toad? So you gasped lightly. There is so much of it. The venom of the 7 Poisons demonic toad could at least kill a level 5 deity. Even a level 4 deity, once touched by the venom, would feel extremely uncomfortable. The most amazing thing was that the venom of the 7 Poisons demonic toad would emit a foul smell if a small amount was ingested. However, if it was very concentrated, it would emit a sweet fragrance like a spiritual pool, which was extremely confusing. Imagine what would happen to anyone who accidentally ingested it or jumped into it to absorb the spiritual energy in it. Even a level 4 deity would end up dead and his soul destroyed. This is good stuff, Suyu exclaimed. Immediately, many magical uses of the venom appeared in his mind. With a thought, the 9 jade spiritual pearl on his arm opened. Suyu opened up a deep pit in the 9 jade spiritual pearl with his mind. Then, with a wave of his hand, the entire colorful lake was sucked into the deep pit of the 9 jade spiritual pearl and stored. The woman bit her red lips as she watched from the side. She was filled with hatred, but she did not dare to step forward to stop Suyu. She watched helplessly as Suyu took away all the spiritual liquid. Suyu was in a slightly better mood. After processing the venom, he looked at the woman. His eyes flickered slightly, and he said, "You can actually bathe in the spiritual liquid of the 7 Poisons demonic toad. It shows that your body is extraordinary. Even a level 4 deity would not dare to bathe in this venom." Not only did she dare to do so, but she was also safe and sound. The woman clenched her teeth and did not say a word. "Anyway, I didn't expect you to confess. I'll do it myself." Suyu sucked her in through the air. The woman's reaction was surprisingly fast. She immediately turned into a remnant of light and fled out of the hall. Suyu smiled and threw out 2 purple gold rings with one hand. They combined into one in the air and turned into the purple gold yin-yang rings, trapping her suddenly. Chapter 1351. Suyu walked over and took a look at her body. Then, he touched her body with one hand and began to feel her up and down. What a strange physique. No, to be precise, it's a strange curse, Suyu murmured, not noticing the woman's flushed face. However, when she heard Suyu say that Suyu had a curse on him, there was a tinge of surprise in her embarrassment and indignation. This curse is quite powerful. Even the sorcery of a saint lady. Well, judging from the fight, it can't be this powerful. Could it be the sorcery of the Moonwatch sect leader himself? Suyu was surprised. He was talking to himself. He didn't mean it, but it sounded like thunder in the woman's ears. "You fought with the saint lady?" The woman was shocked. Who was this man in front of her? He hadn't reached the realm of deities, but he could exert divine power and carry all kinds of treasures. The effect of this wizard curse seems to be a kind of poison sorcery, which causes your body to be slowly corroded by the deadly poison. Logically speaking, you should have died long ago, Suyu said as he pondered. Then, he came to a sudden realization. You've relied on fighting poison with poison to barely survive until today, haven't you? No wonder you bathed in the venom. You are safe and sound because the poison in your body is strong, which counteracts the poison of the 7 Poisons demonic toad. Suyu released his hand and put away the violet gold rings of yin-yang. Now that he knew the whole story, he didn't want to delve into it. He looked at her calmly. "Take care." After that, he left without taking her life. The woman breathed a sigh of relief and was surprised. Ordinary people couldn't tell that she was cursed. In the Empire of Darkness, even people like Shangwan Feiyu couldn't detect it. Only the Emperor, Yongye Juyang, could detect it. What was wrong with this creature with the head of a dragon and the body of a human? However, when she recalled that he had touched her body, she was angry and resentful. I was just taking a bath. Who did I offend? Why should I be seen and touched? Damn it. Don't wait until I see you again, or I'll make you pay. Just then, a questioning voice came. Chushue, who are you talking to? A handsome young man with a noble aura walked in and happened to hear her speak. If Suyu was here, he would not be a stranger. This man was Yongye Wuheng of the Imperial Sacred Faction. The woman named Chushue was undoubtedly Yongye Chushue. Yongye Chushue blushed and stammered, No, nothing. What about the poison pool of the 7 poisons demonic toad? Yongye Wuheng asked in surprise. Hearing this, Yongye Chushue had no choice but to tell him the whole story. Yongye Wuheng's eyes flashed with a cold light when he heard that a mysterious person had broken in, not only snatched the poison pool, but also molested his sister. He said coldly, How dare you? Brother, I don't think he is malicious. Otherwise, I would not be fine now. Let me do it myself. If I meet him again, I will definitely make him pay. Yongye Chushue's snow-white face was burning. Yongye Wuheng blamed himself and said, It's all my fault. This time, I insisted on taking you to dig that thing together with me. Obviously, you have a seal on your body. If the seal was removed, you wouldn't have been molested by an inexplicable person. Your real realm is level 3. A touch of envy appeared on Yongye Wuheng's face. The world only knew that Yongye Wuheng was the most talented person in the past 100 years, but few people knew that the most talented person was actually his low-key sister. She was a genius who was born with the realm of the gods. This was still a strictly guarded secret of the royal family. Apart from their dead mother, the only people in this world who knew this secret were the king and her brother. However, she was born with a curse that sealed most of her power. She could only use it on rare occasions. She had just taken a bath, so it was not convenient for her to tear the seal. Otherwise, Suyu would be the one to die. Yongye Chushue looked sad. I hope I can find a solution when I go to the Lost Nation. Then she asked nervously, Brother, what is the situation outside? Yongye Wuheng's face darkened. The 2 deputy commanders were killed by the Holy Maiden, and the 3 royal brothers are missing. They must have met with misfortune. The exits of the Devil Realm and the Mortal Realm are blocked. We are likely to be trapped in the ruins for 100 years. And Yongye Wuheng frowned. The Saint Realm has changed. The Aisai of the Divine Warrior of Ice and Fire suddenly activated and froze the whole Saint Realm. Hearing this, Yongye Chushue's face was solemn. Brother, what happened? Did you find out? If the Eye of Extreme Ice were to explode, it would be no small matter. The entire Empire of Darkness might be within its range. By then, the Empire of Darkness might be destroyed overnight. Shaking his head, Yongye Wuheng said, We have no eyes and ears. It is very difficult to find out the inside story. The only thing we know is that they are capturing a mysterious man with a dragon's head and a human body. It is likely that he is the one who triggered the Ice Eye. I searched the memory of a wizard's soul and learned that. His face flashed with shock. This mysterious man fought with the Holy Maiden and retreated calmly. A dragon's head and a human body? Yongye Chushue was shocked. Brother, the mysterious man who broke in just now also had a dragon's head and a human body. By the way, he also said that he had fought with the Holy Maiden. Yongye Wuheng was shocked. Is it him? Yongye Wuheng's eyes flickered, and he said, Chushue, we may have a chance to leave the ruins. Do you mean cooperate with him? Yongye Chushue felt uncomfortable all over, especially where Suyu had touched her. She felt them all over. Yongye Wuheng nodded. Yes, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. He is being chased by the Holy Maiden. At this moment, he will definitely force an exit. We might as well cooperate with him and escape from the ruins together. Yongye Chushue's face turned red. She was extremely reluctant, but she still obeyed reason. Well, I still remember his breath. He is in that direction. However, before getting up, Yonya Chushue also covered her face with radiance and hid her breath. The brother and sister quickly went out, and within half a day, they found Suyu. However, unlike what they had imagined, Suyu did not rush to escape through the exit. Instead, he stayed on the top of a mountain and carefully arranged something. They only saw a few golden lights before Suyu finished arranging something. He looked back at the brother and sister from afar. Yonya Wuheng, Yonya Chushue? Suyu was surprised to meet the brother and sister. However, Suyu was currently hiding his identity, so he did not reveal it. He continued to arrange other things as if nothing had happened. Yonya Wuheng looked at Yonya Chushue, and she nodded in confirmation. Yonya Wuheng patted her clenched hand and said, "A little impatience will spoil great plans. With your current appearance, it is impossible for him to recognize you." Gritting her teeth, Yonya Chushue suppressed the urge to fight and calmed down. She walked forward with a smile and said, "I am Yonya Wuheng. I was shocked to hear that you fought against the Saint Lady. I admire you very much." Suyu listened but did not respond. "To tell you the truth, we are also being hunted by the Moonwatch sect. If you don't mind, we are willing to help you open an exit and leave the ruins." Suyu straightened up, looked at the brother and sister for a while, and said, "We can cooperate." Hearing this, Yonya Wuheng and Yonya Chushue could not help but breathe a sigh of relief. However, before they could show their joy, they heard Suyu say, "But not to escape, but to annihilate them here." Hearing this, the two of them, who had seen much of the world and were members of the Imperial Sacred Faction, were petrified on the spot. Annihilate the Saint Lady? Even Shangwan Feiyu wouldn't dare to say such arrogant words. After thinking about it, Yonya Wuheng said, "You may not know this, but 2 level 3 deities of the Empire of Darkness have unfortunately fallen in the hands of this woman." Unexpectedly, Suyu said calmly, "Yes, I saw it." "What?" Yonya Wuheng was taken aback. He saw it with his own eyes. Then you should know how powerful the Holy Maiden is. Why don't we choose the exit Grand Wizard, who is easier to deal with?" Yonya Wuheng said. Suyu looked up into the sky and murmured, "I also thought that we would be safe after leaving the ruins, but now it seems that it is more dangerous outside the ruins." The clues alerted Suyu that it was not safe outside the ruins. It was very likely that what awaited them were enemies. Enemies more terrible than the Moonwatch sect. What? Yonya Wuheng's eyes flashed, and he caught the meaning of Suyu's words. "You mean?" Yonya Wuheng said. Suyu took a deep look at him. "You'll have to ask the Empire of Darkness yourselves. You've been secretly excavating for so many years. I guess the news has finally leaked out, and people have found out." Hearing this, Yonya Wuheng and Yonya Chushue were both shocked, as if they had been seen through. "In short, if you want to venture out of the ruins, I will not stop you. If you want to stay and help me, I welcome you," Suyu said calmly. Yonya Wuheng and Yonya Chushue looked at each other and believed Suyu's words. If the news that the ruins were the tomb of the Ice and Fire Divine Warrior was exposed, it was entirely possible that it would attract terrible enemies. In addition, the restrictions on the opening of the ruins had been lifted, which made them even more convinced. Perhaps the exploration of the ruins this time really contained great danger. Yonya Wuheng's eyes flashed, and he said, "May I ask how confident you are in destroying the people of the Moonwatch sect?" 50%. So you thought about it seriously. Yonya Wuheng's eyes lit up, and he looked surprised. "I didn't expect you to be so confident. If it is 50%, it is not impossible. Well, I choose to join you and face the enemy together. As a condition of cooperation, I hope you can explain to me the means of the arrangement so that I can judge whether what you said is true or not." So you laughed deeply. "Okay, in order to show my sincerity, I will tell you another message. The people who are coming are not only the Holy Maiden, but also a powerful creature who is no weaker than the Holy Maiden." Chapter 1352. One Saint Lady of the Moon sect was not enough, and now there was another powerful being comparable to the Saint Lady. Yonya Wuheng couldn't imagine how Suyu could fight against the two of them alone. Xeni 8 Unksuit was true that Suyu had fought against the Saint Lady of the Moon sect, but was uncertain whether he could defeat her, let alone fight against two such strong beings at the same time. So, are you still willing to cooperate with me? Suyu smiled calmly. Yongye Wuheng thought for a while and smiled bitterly. Do I have a choice? All the exits are sealed. Even if they were lucky enough to escape, greater dangers might be waiting for them outside. He could only take a gamble in the ruins. What are the odds of winning now? Yongye Wuheng asked. Suyu said slowly, probably less than 10%. If one of my guesses is wrong, it will be less than 10%. After that, Suyu continued to lay out the plan carefully. Yongye Wuheng took a deep breath and said to Yongye Chushue with shame, I really implicated you this time. You should have gone straight to the Lost Nation to find a way to solve the witchcraft, but you will be buried here because of me. Yongye Chushue shook her head gently. I don't blame you. Even if we are safe and sound, Suyu may not be alive. With so many followers of the Moonwatch sect, once they find him, they will definitely not spare him. Judging from the current situation, the probability of him still being alive was very small. In this regard, Yongye Wuheng felt a little regretful. This person is really a pity. I have always suspected that he comprehended the heaven-fighting 3 strokes of the heaven-fighting divine warrior. I can't be wrong about that familiar feeling when he smashed the door of the secret room that day. Suyu's heart moved slightly when he heard this, but he pretended to be indifferent. Half a day later, an inexplicable depression emerged in Suyu's heart, making him breathless. They are coming. He just didn't know which force would come first. Suyu still laid out the plan in an orderly manner and did not stop because of this. 2 hours later, Suyu's heart was pounding. That was the reason why the crisis was approaching rapidly. The enemy was coming soon. An hour later, Suyu's body trembled, and a black dragon appeared involuntarily on the surface of his body, as if his body had sensed something of the same origin. Suyu raised his head, his eyes full of surprise. How could Suyu not know this feeling of flesh and blood? It was the World Annihilation Dragon. However, if the World Annihilation Dragon were to descend, Suyu's body would react even more violently. It was not the World Annihilation Dragon, but something or someone closely related to it. It seems that the World Annihilation Dragon is not willing to give up the World Annihilation Dragon's rule fragment. Suyu smiled coldly. Well, since you came first, I will let you have a try. An hour later, the rumbling of thunder and scorching heat waves came from the depths of the sky, as well as an aura that could destroy heaven and earth. Yongye Wuheng and Yongye Chushue finally sensed the arrival of this terrifying aura. Both of them gasped. What a domineering aura. It's full of destructive power and the aura of a dragon. Yongye Wuheng frowned and said. Yongye Chushue pressed her hand against her chest and said with a fierce look in her eyes, Brother, if you have no other choice, run away. You want to forcefully open the seal? Yongye Wuheng was even more ashamed. If it is opened again, the curse will break out completely, and no one will be able to save you at that time. Yongye Chushue's eyes were surprisingly calm, as if she had seen through life and death. In this world, there is only life and death. Since we are both going to die, we might as well fight to the death. Oh, if my sister can do this, how can I, your brother, live like a coward? Yongye Wuheng was also inspired to fight. Ahem, I don't mean to interrupt your heroic speech. Now, can you do me a favor? The two of them were embarrassed. Yongye Wuheng stepped forward and said proudly, Wuheng can't do anything else, but when it comes to killing the enemy, I will never retreat. Then you should retreat. I don't need you to kill the enemy. Your strength is insignificant in front of all my arrangements. Yongye Wuheng was surprised, but he was a little angry in his heart. He said expressionlessly, What do you want me to do? Just tell me. Go to the center of the Saint Realm for me, Suyu said lightly. Not only Yongye Wuheng, but also Yongye Chushue was shocked. They never expected that at this critical moment, Suyu would only ask them to go to the Saint Realm. That place has become a world of ice and snow. Don't tell me you want to dig up the world-level civilization weapon now to change the situation? Yongye Chushue was very puzzled. Suyu shook his head. No, I just want you to bring something there. If everything goes well, you should be able to make it in time. As he spoke, So you took out a sealed golden box and handed it to Yongya Wuheng. Put this into the center of the Saint Realm, where the world-level civilization weapon is located. Whether we can be saved or not depends on whether you're willing to do it. Yongya Wuheng tried to see what was inside, but this golden box was actually made of the waste of the golden flames forbidden wood, so he couldn't break it at all. Therefore, he had no idea what was inside this golden box. Yongya Wuheng was surprised. If it is just to bring something, it should not be difficult. But is it possible in time? At my speed, it will take at least 5 days to get to the center of the Saint Realm. 5 days. Can you still hold on? Suyu smiled faintly, and a Tai Chi pattern appeared on top of his head. The yin and yang energy shrouded the brother and sister. I can send you there in an instant. Both of them were stunned when they saw this object, and then they were astounded. Tai Chi yin-yang wings. The brother and sister both exclaimed in shock. How could they not know the emperor-based saint artifact of the Tai Chi divine emperor? This was a heaven-defying flying treasure that had long been lost between heaven and earth. It was ranked 19th in the ancient divine weapon list. It is in your hands. Yongya Wuheng couldn't believe it. If this matter was spread out, even the emperor of the Empire of Darkness would have to deal with it in person. Who wouldn't be tempted by the inheritance of one of the 9 emperors? Suyu's expression was indifferent. Whether we can leave here alive or not depends on you and your sister. Wait, Yongya Wuheng said. If this golden box can change the situation, why don't you send in person? Why stay here and take the risk to fight with them? Suyu smiled helplessly. If I hadn't attracted them here, would it have been possible for me to place this thing here? This. Yongya Wuheng's eyes were filled with admiration. He bowed and said, Wuheng admires you. However, leave this matter to my sister. I'm a little dissatisfied. My ability is insignificant compared to your arrangements. How would you know if you don't try? Seeing the inexplicable fighting spirit in Yongya Wuheng's eyes, Suyu no longer tried to dissuade him. Instead, he gathered all the yin and yang energy above Yongya Chushue's head. Yongya Wuheng didn't give her a chance to refuse and threw the gold box to her. Wait, don't, Yongya Chushue exclaimed. However, before she could refuse, the yin and yang energies circulated, instantly teleporting her hundreds of millions of miles away, directly arriving at the center of the Saint region. Suyu and Yongya Wuheng, who were left behind, looked at each other and smiled. Then, they looked at the distant sky together. Over there, 4 indistinct black figures stomped on the ground, causing heaven and earth to rumble. Majestic auras descended. The black-robed man in the lead walked over with his hands clasped behind his back. His expression was grave and stern, and his entire body emitted an unsettling aura. Suyu's pupil shrank slightly. Sure enough, it was the breath of the world annihilation dragon. Suyu was no stranger to the 3 people behind him. The arrow slave, who carried a golden longbow on his back. There was also the Thunderbolt Immortal, who was surrounded by thunderbolts, and the Black Flame Immortal, who was surrounded by black flames. The 4 of them came across the sky in a turbulent manner. Ants, we finally meet, the black-robed young man said in an indifferent tone, full of contempt and a little annoyance. Suyu's face was calm. Indeed, we meet again, good for nothing. The black-robed young man smiled coldly, and his white teeth reflected a frightening cold light in the sunlight. I think it's more appropriate to describe you as a good-for-nothing. Oh, then, who was the one who came here aggressively, only to be suppressed for hundreds of millions of years? It was you, wasn't it? Suyu said lightly. You failed to kill me, and instead, your treasure was stolen by me. Now, you are so exasperated that you send your doppelganger out to look for me. Isn't it you? I don't understand. A good-for-nothing like you. Not only did you not feel ashamed, but you also looked down on this and that. Do you think you are so great? The black-robed young man's eyebrows were cold, and his killing intent was deep. His smile became more and more sinister. What a sharp tongue. Unfortunately, I am not here today to bicker with you. The black-robed young man looked at the 3 arrow slaves. Don't you want to kill him and take back the descendants of the World Annihilation Emperor? I will leave him to you. Hearing this, Yongye Wuheng was shocked. The descendants of the World Annihilation Emperor still existed in this world. Weren't they all killed in the past? Also, these people had all fallen into Su Yu's hands. If the divine blood of the World Annihilation Emperor was extracted, how much would it be? The arrow slaves were slightly surprised. It was obvious that the black-robed young man could easily kill them. Why did he still need to use them? However, they were confident that they could kill Su Yu. Since they had been defeated in the past, they still preferred to do it themselves. Leave the arrow slave to me. Yongye Wuheng's eyes were sharp, and he was keenly aware that the arrow slave was the most difficult to deal with. Su Yu shook his head lightly. To deal with them, I alone am enough. In the past, Su Yu had suffered a lot when the four of them hunted him down. But now it was different from the past. Haha, after half a year, your cultivation has not made any progress, but your arrogance has skyrocketed. In the past, you were hunted by us like a stray dog, but now you dare to bark like a dog. The arrow slave laughed. The real body of Thunderbolt and the real body of Black Flame also sneered at Su Yu. Su Yu said with a smile, for level 5 deities ambushed a stage for mortal fairy. Not only did they fail to kill him, but they also lost one of their deities. This is a laughingstock, but in your words, it has become a great honor. TSK, it is really sad that the descendants of the arrow slave have become so depraved. The arrow slave's face froze and then darkened. The faces of the Thunderbolt Immortal and the Black Flame Immortal also darkened. That is because your conspiracy succeeded. The arrow slave shouted coldly. However, he was interrupted by Su Yu with a fake smile. This is the excuse of the weak. The arrow slave was stunned, and his expression became more serious. Two immortals, don't talk nonsense with him anymore. Let's end this quickly. As he said that, the three of them flew over. The arrow slave pulled the long arrow from afar and suppressed Su Yu with the same method, so that the Black Flame Immortal and the Thunderbolt Immortal had enough time to perform their joint attack. Su Yu sneered. You want to use the same trick again? But you need to have a chance to perform it again. After saying that, he raised his left hand. All of a sudden, the wind and clouds changed. Two magnificent rays of black light ran through thousands of miles of mountains and rivers and condensed into a Tai Chi pattern in the sky. Chapter 1353. The Tai Chi pattern shrouded all three of them in the air. The arrow slave sneered. Ambush! As he said that, he retreated quickly. As a long-range attack deity, standing outside the attack range of the enemy was the best way. However, as soon as he moved, a gust of cold wind suddenly swept in from outside the Tai Chi pattern. The arrow slave was shocked. He tried to break through the storm and get out of the range of the Tai Chi pattern. However, he failed and was pushed into the center of the Tai Chi pattern by the storm. Close! While the arrow slave was shocked and angry, Su Yu shouted in a low voice. The Tai Chi pattern shrank rapidly. It shrank from 10 million feet to 1 million feet, and from 1 million feet to 1 million feet. The storm outside also shrank, making it impossible for them to escape. The arrow slave said coldly, Kill the leader first. Kill Su Yu, and the ambush will be destroyed. He raised his golden bow and shot an arrow at Su Yu, who was outside the storm. The golden arrow stayed in the storm for a while. Then, it successfully passed through the storm and shot at Su Yu. Su Yu was in the middle of casting the spell and couldn't move. When he was about to be killed by the arrow, blue ice light suddenly appeared on the surface of his body. Ding! The long arrow sank into the ice blue light and couldn't go any further. After a few seconds, it finally fell to the ground. At this time, the Tai Chi pattern shrank to a radius of 10 feet. The arrow slave shouted anxiously. It's too late to cast the joint attack. Let's break through. The Thunderbolt Immortal and the Black Flame Immortal were shocked by the situation in front of them. How could they continue to cast the divine path calmly? The three of them used all kinds of magic treasures to resist the rapidly shrinking Tai Chi pattern with their divine strength. However, the Tai Chi pattern shrank crazily with an unstoppable momentum. 10 feet, 8 feet, 15 feet, 30 feet, 10 feet. At last it shrank to 5 feet. The three of them were squeezed together. At this time, the Tai Chi pattern finally revealed its true appearance. The arrow slave and the two immortals were scared out of their wits. The purple gold ring of Yin Yang, the imperial saint artifact of the Shui Nation in the North Territory. This emperor-based saint artifact, ranked in the 70s, was very famous. Countless tribe leaders have been killed by it. Without exception, they were all squeezed to death. Quickly activate your divine Tao. The three of us can still resist the violet gold Yin Yang rings. The arrow slave's expression changed drastically, and he almost roared. He had never thought that, after only a few months, when he would face Suyu again, the situation would be so one-sided. Clang. When the purple gold Yin Yang rings compressed again, the trio's divine Tao was finally able to resist it and did not compress any further. Arrow Slave's face was as gloomy as water, and he said in a stern voice, "If I don't kill him, I am not a man." "Then, you should just become a ghost," Suyu said calmly, while he took out an exquisite peacock with a flip of his palm. The peacock danced in the sky, and the circular rings of light on its feathers shot out beams of divine light towards the three of them. The moment the divine light appeared, the arrow slave's heart was in his throat. He said in horror, "Is that the peacock plume that killed Yin Wu, a level 2 deity in the Great War?" As soon as he finished speaking, a beam of divine light shot straight at him. The arrow slave was scared out of his wits. He turned his body and moved the immortal of black flame to his position. In an instant, the immortal of black flame was pierced into pieces, and he didn't even have the chance to scream. The thunderbolt immortal was furious. "Arrow slave, you..." As soon as he finished speaking, another beam of divine light shot towards him, and this time it was aimed at the arrow slave. The arrow slave was frightened, and he shouted angrily, "Sue, do you really want to fight me to the death? Oh, now you're talking about fighting me to the death. Even if you die, the net will not be broken." So he said coldly. Swoosh, the divine light pierced through, and the arrow slave tried to move again, but he was stopped by the thunderbolt immortal, who shouted, "Arrow slave, you dog slave, you deserve to be killed, and only your soul is left. When the World Annihilation Imperial Sacred Faction was in danger, you betrayed him, and now you betrayed us when we are in danger. No wonder the Grand Elder was worried about you and transformed all of you into puppets. Haha, you deserve it." The arrow slave's face was gloomy, and he took out an arrow and pierced through the thunderbolt immortal's head from behind. He said gloomily, "You can shut up now." One of the thunderbolt immortal's eyes was pierced by the arrow, and he looked extremely ferocious. He said with a hideous smile, "Sue, his weakness is between the eyebrows, and other parts of his body can't kill him. Don't miss." The arrow slave turned his wrist, and the arrow stirred and ended the thunderbolt immortal's life completely. "Between the eyebrows?" "Thank you," Suyu said, and raised the longbow of the golden flames forbidden wood expressionlessly. "The last arrow is for you." Swish! With a beam of divine light, the golden arrow also turned into a ray of remnant light, piercing through the arrow slave from two directions, and went straight for his vital point between the eyebrows. At this moment, even if he wanted to escape, he had no chance. At the critical moment of life and death, the arrow slave shouted at the black-clothed youth, "Master, if not now, when?" "Heh." The black-clothed youth, who had been watching from the side, smiled evilly and took a step toward Suyu. "Who gave you the right to kill my people?" As soon as his voice fell, the infinite dragon breath covered the sky and the earth. Even if the saintess of the god sect were here, she would still be afraid of the terrifying flames. However, Suyu did not even look at it and coldly shouted, "Get out of here!" After saying that, he also took a step forward. Suddenly, the sky and the earth rumbled, as if it had been crushed into pieces. There was even a roar in the universe, and a cry that shattered the ancient time and space. The shocking fighting spirit rose from the ground and turned into an amazing will that broke through the flames. The black-clothed youth's face suddenly froze, and he raised his arms. Clang! As if he had been bombarded by omnipresent attacks, The clothes of the black-clothed youth were shattered, revealing his dark body with scales. His whole body was bombarded everywhere, and sparks flew from the friction. Thud, thud, thud. The evil-looking youth took a few steps back, and a black breath overflowed from the corner of his mouth. It seemed that he had suffered a serious injury. At the same time, a scream of unwillingness pierced through the sky. The arrow slave avoided the divine light of the peacock feather, but his head was pierced by the light of the arrow. From between the eyebrows, a group of soul fragments drifted out. His eyes dimmed, and the arrow slave was unable to resist the violet gold rings of Inyan. With a click, the arrow slave's body was crushed, and he completely disappeared from the world. Yongya Wuheng, who witnessed all this, was shocked. He was not convinced by Su Yu's evaluation of him. Compared to his arrangements, his strength was negligible. But now he was convinced. It was impossible for him to kill 3 level 5 deities in one go. What shocked him the most was the shocking battle will. How could he not know what it was? The essence of the heaven-fighting divine warrior, the first style of the heaven-fighting 3 strokes, heaven-stomping style. In an instant, Yongya Wuheng realized who the mysterious strong man with a dragon head and human body in front of him was. He was Su Yu, the Su Yu who fought with the Saint Lady and took away the imperial saint artifact of the Xuan nation in the Northern Territory. Also, the Su Yu who molested his sister and took away the colorful poison pool. Knowing that it was him, Yongya Wuheng could not help but feel relieved and even a little happy. If his sister's husband was like this, it seemed that the crime of molesting him could be completely ignored. For a moment, Yongya Wuheng couldn't help but laugh. This was a genius who could understand the heaven-fighting 3 strokes. His sister was lucky. Compared to his joy, the young man in black was extremely gloomy. After all, he failed to save the arrow slave and was injured himself. The playful look in his eyes had long been replaced by a strong, murderous intent. He gritted his teeth and said, "Good, good, good." The essence of the heaven-fighting divine warrior's combat skills has fallen into your hands. What he cared about at the moment was not the life and death of the arrow slave, but his own honor and disgrace. Su Yu raised his hand and grabbed the violet gold rings of Yin Yang back. Then he floated towards him and said indifferently, "A good-for-nothing is a good-for-nothing. You can't even protect the person you want to protect, and you only dare to speak harshly." Hearing this, the evil young man looked up to the sky and laughed wildly. "Aunt, don't think I don't know that you have set up an ambush here, waiting for me to attack. Now it seems that the ambush is almost exposed, right?" He did not let the 3 arrow slaves attack first for no reason. It was to test whether Su Yu had set up an ambush. After all, Su Yu not only survived the fragment of the law, but also refined a fragment of the law. How could the World Annihilation Dragon not be afraid of him? However, he found that Su Yu's arrangement was nothing more than that, so he was slightly relieved. After saying that, the evil young man shook his body and shook away the remaining power of desolation around him. With a fierce look, he turned into a World Annihilation Dragon that was thousands of feet long. With a roar, he flew over. However, Su Yu's mouth was slightly sarcastic. Exhausted? Before saying that, "You should really know more about me." 9 suns, sword formation. Without giving the other party a chance to respond, Su Yu shouted. Suddenly, a shocking scene appeared. 9 dazzling golden suns suddenly appeared in the sky, hanging in the sky, surrounding thousands of miles of mountains and rivers. The sky, the earth, the mountains, and the rivers were all rendered golden by the golden sunlight, as if the whole world had fallen into a world of gold. Yongya Wuheng looked up at the dazzling golden light and could not open his eyes. Not only was the golden light dazzling, but there was also a fierce and terrible sword energy pouring down with the golden light. Swish! A sense of crisis rose in Yongya Wuheng's heart, and he immediately retreated to the edge of thousands of miles of mountains and rivers. Although none of the sword energy was deliberately aimed at him, Yongya Wuheng's intuition told him that if he stayed here, he might be killed by the sword energy. After retreating thousands of miles of mountains and rivers, Yongya Wuheng immediately ran his divine power, rolling it to his limbs and veins. He saw that tiny needle-like swords were forced out of his pores one after another. His meridians had already shown tens of thousands of signs of rupture. His flesh, internal organs, and bones were all injured, which were invisible to the naked eye. Yongya Wuheng took a breath of cold air and looked up at the 9 suns again. His eyes were filled with horror. What kind of sword formation is this? Wait, why does it seem so familiar? Chapter 1354. However, even the Emperor couldn't do anything to me, let alone the sword formation left behind. The World Annihilation Dragon swept its long tail. Boom, boom. As the long tail swept across, heaven and earth collapsed, the mountains and rivers dried up, and the atmosphere shook. A part of the world was destroyed into nothingness. The 9 suns in the sky screamed violently, and the golden light flickered. Suyu's face was calm, and his hands formed a seal. Kill! Swish! Swish! Suddenly, the 9 golden suns in the sky changed their positions, leaving countless blurred shadows in the sky. Puff! Suddenly, there was a muffled sound, followed by a painful dragon roar. A golden long sword was inserted into the body of the World Annihilation Dragon, and countless dragon breaths spewed out from the wound. Ants! This is the Golden Flame's forbidden wood. This wood has clearly been destroyed by me, and it cannot survive in this world. The World Annihilation Dragon roared. Suyu closed his eyes and manipulated the other golden sword to cross the void and kill the World Annihilation Dragon. Puff! Puff! With a muffled sound, the 9 golden flames forbidden wood swords were all inserted into the body of the World Annihilation Dragon. Suyu frowned slightly. As expected of the World Annihilation Dragon, its body was incredibly hard. According to Suyu's estimation, there were not many creatures in the world that could not penetrate the 9 suns sword formation forged by the Golden Flames forbidden wood. However, the World Annihilation Dragon, something related to the World Annihilation Dragon was so hard. If it were any other deity, except for the top 30 Emperor Baisane artifacts, they would not even be able to hurt him. The dragon's body was pierced by the 9 golden swords, but did not cause much damage to the World Annihilation Dragon. Instead, it became more ferocious, and it roared, "Ants! Those who hurt me have never had a good ending, and you are no exception." Roar! With a roar, the dragon's body shook violently, and the raging dragon breath spewed out from its body, turning into boundless flames that covered thousands of miles. Suyu was the target of the flames. This dragon breath was different from Suyu's dragon breath. It was extremely pure, comparable to the World Annihilation Dragon. Suyu stared at it and shouted, "Colorful poison pool." Suyu clapped his hands toward the sky, and a turquoise bead emerged from the hidden void. Then it opened abruptly. It was as if the Milky Way had fallen from the 9 heavens. Endless 7-colored liquid gushed out. The liquid was fragrant, like spiritual liquid. However, when it landed on the flames of the dragon's breath, it made the dragon's breath sizzle and weaken. The dragon breath flames were soon extinguished. The rest of the spiritual liquid was poured onto the body of the World Annihilation Dragon. In an instant, its scales were corroded to the point of sizzling sounds. However, it was unable to corrode the scales, so it was unable to cause any harm. However, there were still 9 golden swords stuck in his body. The spiritual liquid poured into his body through the wounds caused by the golden swords and corroded his body from the inside. Roar! The World Annihilation Dragon let out a shrill scream, and the colorful poison could clearly be seen gradually spreading through its dark body. Ants! The World Annihilation Dragon was furious to the extreme. He thought that Suyu had used up all his tricks, but he didn't expect that Suyu still had more powerful tricks up his sleeves. However, these were not enough to injure or kill the World Annihilation Dragon, let alone kill it. Enduring the severe pain, the World Annihilation Dragon laughed fiercely. "I have not eaten a living creature for a long time. You are the first in hundreds of millions of years." Roar! With another roar, The dragon's roar shook the sky, and the entire ruins trembled. The endless dragon's roar shook the 9 golden swords stuck in his body one by one. The wounds left behind healed quickly. At the same time, the flames of the dragon's breath roared in his body, burning wildly. A trace of 7-colored mist flew out of his pores. He was strong enough to evaporate the venom that had entered his body. Devourer of the divine dragon. The world annihilation dragon opened his mouth, and the entire ruins shook wildly. The astonishing suction force produced swallowed the mountains and rivers into it. Crack! The earth cracked, and the land hundreds of millions of miles around cracked into thousands of miles. In an instant, it was torn apart and rolled up into the mouth of the world annihilation dragon. In the sanctuary, hundreds of millions of miles away, the mysterious ice shattered into countless pieces. Yonya Chushue, who had just put away the golden box, was shocked. She hurriedly retreated to resist the swallowing force. The people of the divine sect, who had just arrived at the center of the devil area, were also shocked by this swallowing force, and they all looked horrified. Many wizards were swept away by the crazy swallowing force, screaming in the air. The holy maiden's pretty face changed, and she immediately put her hands together with a solemn expression. She recited a majestic incantation, which enveloped everyone present. In this way, they finally stabilized their bodies. The Grand Wizard was horrified. Holy Maiden, what kind of magical power is this? It's so terrible. The Holy Maiden's pretty face was also calm. From the aura, it is that mysterious young man in black. As for the move, this is the divine dragon's magical power, devourer of the divine dragon. That young man in black is actually a divine dragon. The Grand Wizard was horrified. No wonder it's so terrible. This devourer of the divine dragon can probably swallow the entire ruins. The Holy Maiden shook her head. No, the current devourer of the divine dragon should only have less than 1% of its true power. Otherwise, it won't just be the entire ruins that will be swallowed, but a medium god. The real devourer of the divine dragon is specially created to swallow a medium god. The Grand Wizard's throat seemed to be blocked by something, and he was so shocked that he couldn't speak. After a long time, he took a deep breath and said, there's no need to chase him anymore. If he is also chasing that creature, we don't have to do anything. However, at this moment, the Holy Maiden's eyes suddenly narrowed. Wait, what is that? Why is there suddenly an additional aura of 100 gods? After pondering for a while, the Holy Maiden's eyes flashed. Let's go and have a look. The situation seems to be wrong. They who were hundreds of millions of miles away were affected so greatly, let alone Suyu, who was in the devil area. As soon as the devour of the divine dragon was performed, the 9-sun sword formation was swallowed up. Yonya Wuhan couldn't withstand it and was sucked away in an instant. The 4 grand wizards who guarded the exit of the devil area and the grand wizard who guarded the mortal area, except for the sanctuary, all the creatures and all the ruins were swallowed up in a few breaths. At this moment, the scene was shocking. It didn't look like a ruin at all. It was bare everywhere, revealing the space barrier. The atmosphere, the sky, the earth, all the creatures, everything was swallowed up, leaving only the space barrier. Through the space barrier, one could even see the frozen bottom of the river outside. Above this smooth space barrier, a pitch-black dragon that was thousands of feet long was still swallowing like a bottomless pit. In front of it stood a slender figure, and behind him stood hundreds of thousands of feet high virtual shadows. It was these virtual shadows that blocked the dragon's mouth and prevented it from being swallowed. After a long time, the divine dragon's devourer of the world annihilation dragon weakened. The world annihilation dragon closed its mouth, and its huge blood-red eyes widened. It stared at the hundreds of virtual shadows in disbelief. The majestic figures appeared behind Suyu alone. It was as if all the gods were serving Suyu as their king. In particular, one of the extremely magnificent figures made the world annihilation dragon cry out in horror. The heaven-defying divine warrior. Impossible. How could a superior god possibly lower himself to become a human's godly idol? Chapter 1355. Suyu frowned. He was just an ordinary human creature. What was so strange about that? As for the shadows of the 9 emperors, each of them had a clear origin. It was not because of Suyu's special identity. If one had to say that it was special, there was only one thing that was too special: the divine 9-dragon cauldron. This was something that Suyu still could not figure out, and he could not figure out its origin. He thought it was a very high-ranking Imperial Saint artifact until it reforged Suyu's body and refined a fragment of the rules. Suyu knew that the divine 9-dragon cauldron was not an Imperial Saint artifact. No matter how powerful an Imperial Saint artifact was, it did not have the power to refine the fragment of the rules. Perhaps the 9 emperors' shadows gathered in Suyu's body because of the divine 9-dragon cauldron. Seeing that Suyu did not answer, the World Annihilation Dragon said, "Since you don't answer, I will search your soul myself." Roar! Another earth-shattering dragon roar rang out. Hundreds of divine path shadows swayed again and again, flashing with indeterminate light. "Don't think that you can compete with me with 100 divine paths." The World Annihilation Dragon opened his mouth again, and a ball of destruction was brewing in his mouth. The Holy Maiden, who had just arrived, was shocked. Without saying a word, she once again cast a spell to protect herself and the others. She asked, "This is the Dragon Ball?" Her pretty face was cautious, and she said solemnly, "Everyone, cast a defensive spell. Do not waver no matter what happens. Otherwise, even I can't save you." Facing this Dragon Ball, Suyu's whole body kept trembling, and his dragon body appeared involuntarily. After the appearance of the Dragon Ball, the whole ruin burst into a cracking sound, as if it was a crystal that was about to collapse under too much pressure. The World Annihilation Dragon held the Dragon Ball in his mouth and said, "The number of Xing River overlords who died under the World Annihilation Dragon Ball is no less than the fragment of the rules. Although this is not the original Dragon Ball, its aura is enough to destroy you thousands of times. Die." The World Annihilation Dragon spat out a fiery red Dragon Ball from its mouth. Boom! Boom! The ruins trembled, and cracks appeared in the space barrier, spreading throughout the ruins. A sense of crisis of destruction surged in his heart. However, at this moment, Suyu was unusually calm. In such a critical moment of life and death, there was no change in his expression. He glanced at the Saintess and the others from afar and said indifferently, "Is everyone here?" The World Annihilation Dragon and the Holy Maiden were both surprised. Did Suyu still have some tricks up his sleeves? "Since you are here, this relic exploration should be coming to an end," Suyu said calmly. As he spoke, he raised his head and pointed outside the spatial barrier of the ruins. "I helped you gather everyone. Shouldn't you thank me?" The World Annihilation Dragon narrowed his eyes. "Who are you talking to?" The Holy Maiden also looked around, her eyes shining brightly. Could it be that there was an even more powerful being here? After a long silence, there was no response. The World Annihilation Dragon put away his nervousness and smiled gloomily. Deliberately mystifying? "Even if there's someone, I'm the most powerful person in this ruin." Suyu shook his head. "First of all, this is not a relic, but an ancient tomb. Secondly, you're not the most powerful person here. He's the most powerful. Am I right, sect leader of the heaven-defying Imperial Sacred Sect?" The heaven-defying Imperial Sacred Sect had established one of the 4 great empires, the heaven-defying empire. The Sacred Gate leader was a level 2 deity. Apart from the other 3 gate leaders, there were few who could rival him. It wasn't until he revealed his real name that a chuckle reverberated in the void. "Interesting." Swish! The silver-white light flashed, and above their heads, a middle-aged man with his arms crossed appeared. He was looking at them with a smile. There was no aura around him, and he was no different from an ordinary person. His face was dark, and his eyes were deep and calm, revealing boundless sharpness. He stood in the sky without moving, but he gave everyone present an unparalleled pressure. The Holy Maiden's beautiful face changed, and she exclaimed incredulously, "Leader of the heaven-defying imperial sacred sect, Nitian Guyun." As the holy maiden of the divine sect, how could she not know who Nitian Guyun was? Nitian Guyun was different from the leader of the heaven-defying imperial sacred sect of any era. Not only was his talent amazing, but he had also cultivated to level 2 in the shortest time in history. He was also a man of great talent and great ambition. The heaven-defying empire was close to the Lost Nation, but because of the dangerous environment of the Lost Nation, the heaven-defying empire had always been on the defensive for many years. It was not until Nitian Guyun became the new king that he changed from defense to offense and took the initiative to wipe out the Moonwatch sect hidden in the Lost Nation. In the war that lasted for 1,000 years, the Moonwatch sect lost 30% of its strongholds, and the casualties reached as many as 20%. Although the Moonwatch sect launched a powerful counterattack, Nitian Guyun was very good at planning and advancing step by step. Not only did the Moonwatch sect fail to regain their lost territory, but they also suffered heavy casualties. If this continued, in less than 3,000 years, the Moonwatch sect might be wiped out by Nitian Guyun. In the past, the 9 great imperial sacred sects joined forces, but they did not manage to kill the Moonwatch sect. Today, they were forced to such a point by the heaven-defying empire. All of this was the credit of Nitian Guyun. In the Moonwatch sect, Nitian Guyun was respected like the sorcerer ancestor, an existence with superior wisdom. As for the Holy Maiden, she grew up hearing Nitian Guyun's name. She knew very well how terrifying this low-key monarch of the empire was. Nitian Guyun glanced at her, and his deep eyes were filled with a gentle smile. The new Holy Maiden? In terms of talent, strength, and appearance, you are stronger than the previous Holy Maiden. Well, you can also join my harem. Hearing this, the Holy Maiden's face turned pale. The previous Holy Maiden was captured by Nitian Guyun, and her cultivation was destroyed. She was then brought into the harem and became one of Nitian Guyun's many concubines. This matter was a great shame for the Moonwatch sect. Biting her lip, the Holy Maiden looked calm, but her heart was racing. No one expected that the heaven-defying divine warrior would come to the ruins in person. Nitian Guyun laughed and looked at Su Yu with his arms folded. He glanced at the heaven-defying divine warrior's divine Laksana behind him, and his eyes shone with a deep light. Immediately, he looked at the World Annihilation Dragon. Oh, it's like the breath of the World Annihilation Dragon. Nitian Guyun looked indifferent, as if he was not surprised that the World Annihilation Dragon had reappeared. "Let me see what you are." As he said this, he stretched out his right arm and grabbed the World Annihilation Dragon. The playfulness in the World Annihilation Dragon's eyes had long been replaced by anger. He did not expect that there was really a strong person. As the saying goes, the mantis stalks the cicada, unaware of the oriole behind. As this palm came, the World Annihilation Dragon's face changed. He activated the Dragon Ball and blasted it at Nitian Guyun. Nitian Guyun smiled faintly, changed his palm into a fist, and directly bombarded the Dragon Ball. Bang! The deafening sound resounded through the sky, and the Dragon Ball was smashed into pieces by the punch. The destructive power that escaped from it swept around and hit the space barrier of the ruins. With a loud roar, the ruins were finally broken, and a gap of tens of millions of miles was created. Endless cold water poured in, drowning the ruins. The Dragon Ball was destroyed, and the World Annihilation Dragon let out an angry roar. You are about to break through the barrier of the gods and reach the realm of Level 1. It was rumored that the leaders of the 4 imperial sacred factions were equal in strength. However, no one knew the real situation. Because of the existence of the Moon God sect, the 4 imperial sacred factions had never fought against each other. Nitian Guyun smiled and slammed his palm down again. The World Annihilation Dragon was shocked and turned to flee. As he fled, he turned his head and opened his huge dragon mouth. Divine Dragon Devour. An earth-shattering suction force came ferociously. Nitian Guyun just smiled and pressed his palm down. He ignored the Divine Dragon Devour and pressed it on the World Annihilation Dragon. Rumble. The World Annihilation Dragon was pressed against the space barrier with one palm, and a huge gap appeared in the barrier. The dragon's body was fragmented, and its breath was spraying everywhere. It was dying. With just two palms, the World Annihilation Dragon was suppressed to such a state. Seeing this scene, the Holy Maiden was shocked. It was one thing to hear about Nitian Guyun's power, but it was another thing to see it with her own eyes. The World Annihilation Dragon struggled powerlessly under his palm, and he kept roaring, "Little ant, this is just an incarnation of me. Let me go immediately, or I will slaughter your bloodline in the future." Nitian Guyun still had a faint smile on his face. "World Annihilation Dragon, even if you don't come to me, I will come to you." After that, he clenched his 5 fingers, and with a click, the World Annihilation Dragon's body was crushed into a large black flame. "You will regret this." The World Annihilation Dragon let out a roar. Nitian Guyun waved his sleeves, and the black flame dissipated, leaving only a black scale in place. The reverse scale of the World Annihilation Dragon contains the essence of the World Annihilation Dragon. No wonder it is level 3. Nitian Guyun said lightly. He sucked the scale into his palm and said calmly, "This is a good thing." However, on the way, the dragon scale suddenly changed direction and shot towards Suyu. The will of the World Annihilation Dragon attached to the dragon scale had been broken up by Nitian Guyun. The dragon scale sensed the breath of the World Annihilation Dragon on Suyu, so of course it chose him. Nitian Guyun was dumbfounded. "It's a pity that I can't let you do as you wish. You are my trophy." However, just as he sucked in air, a palm grabbed it. The owner of the palm was Suyu. He held it in his palm with no expression on his face, and the reverse scale returned to its original body and integrated into Suyu's body. This move was undoubtedly a provocation to Nitian Guyun. Nitian Guyun smiled. "Interesting. You are the first to snatch something from me in front of me." The Holy Maiden looked at Suyu in disbelief. Was the peerless power shown by Nitian Guyun not enough to shock him? How could he do such a thing in front of her? Suyu did not raise his head, and said in a neither humble nor arrogant manner, "What is in your hands is yours. Now it is mine." With the experience of fighting against the demonic god of 6 paths, Suyu did not panic much when facing a strong person of this level. Chapter 1356. It was impossible for Nitian Guyun to allow his ancestor to voluntarily become a junior of the divine Laksana. The moment the divine Laksana was discovered, in Nitian Guyun's heart, Suyu was labeled as dead. He turned his head, looked at the Holy Maiden, and said with a smile, "Be my concubine. I will let you and the previous Holy Maiden serve me together." The Holy Maiden blushed and gritted her teeth. "What if I say no? You have no right to choose. Even if the leader of the Moonwatch sect is present, he can't change my decision." As he spoke, Nitian Guyun waved his sleeves, and a halo shrouded the Holy Maiden and the 100 wizards. The Holy Maiden's face tightened, and she joined forces with the wizards to cast witchcraft. However, the ripples that were produced were all crushed by the halo. The Holy Maiden was shocked, and she crushed the jade pendant on her chest, from which a majestic wizard power rippled. The strength of the wizard power was beyond compare. The wizard power swept out, repelling the halo, and swept towards Nitian Guyun at the same time. The corners of Nitian Guyun's mouth curled up. "Oh, it seems that the leader of the Moonwatch sect attaches far more importance to you than the previous leader. He personally made the protection curse for you. However, I said that even if the leader of the Moonwatch sect is present, he can't change my decision. I want you to serve me, so you have to serve me." Nitian Guyun said lightly, waving his fist in the air. The fist was full of an unyielding will to destroy all obstacles in the world. It was the Defiance will. 7 defying fists. Invisibly, it seemed that 7 sounds rang out at the same time. The wizard curse that was attacking was inexplicably bombarded by 7 consecutive blows, all of which were shattered into smoke. When the wizard curse dissipated, the figure of the Holy Maiden was nowhere to be seen. Nitian Guyun looked up at the gap in the sky, and the corners of his mouth curled up into a smile. The person I want can't go away. Seal the sky. Nitian Gyun uttered the meaning of the defiance will. This defiance will seem to look down on all things in the world, even the heavens. In the red pit, in the sky of the thousands of miles of gap, a will suddenly appeared and echoed. Bang! There was a soft sound, and it seemed that something was blocked by the will. Taking a closer look, it was the saintess who was surrounded by an invisibility spell. Lock the ground, Nitian Gyun said again. Another majestic will descended, sealing off the surrounding area. As a result, even the gap in the ground was sealed. Trap! Another strand of will descended. The holy maiden, who was in the sky, was suddenly bound by this will. Not only was her sorcery power sealed, but she was also unable to move her body. She fell straight down. Nitian Gyun raised his hand and summoned him to his side. Looking at her graceful body, Nitian Gyun smiled and said, I want you. Even if you don't want to, you have to. He killed the World Annihilation Dragon with 2 moves and captured the Holy Virgin with 3 moves. Nitian Gyun smiled lightly and finally looked at Suyu. I left you until the end because I wanted to ask you a question. Where did the heaven-defying divine warrior's divine Laksana come from? Of course, it was Suyu who had condensed it himself. He also had an unyielding will. Not going to answer? Then you have lost your value, and I will grant you death. Nitian Gyun had a faint smile on his face, as if he was a creator who could decide the life and death of people with a single thought. Suyu raised his eyes and said lightly, I don't answer because there is no need to answer, especially to you. Oh, from the beginning, you have overestimated yourself. I don't understand why you are qualified. Nitian Gyun chuckled, but his palm grabbed Suyu across the air. The World Annihilation Dragon was destroyed by his grasp, let alone Suyu. But at this moment, in the direction of the sanctuary, a terrible breath suddenly broke out. It was as if something sleeping had been awakened from ancient times. The barrier of the ruins shattered and turned into countless dust. The frozen river, which froze billions of mountains and rivers, suddenly set off a huge wave, sweeping away everything along the way. The snow mountain that had been pressed for thousands of years in the northern Xuan nation collapsed, and the never-ending snowflakes suddenly disappeared. In the imperial city of darkness, deep in the palace, on the top of the throne, a majestic middle-aged man suddenly opened his eyes and looked surprised. This breath is the ice and fire divine warrior. His remains have been found at the bottom of the frozen river in the completely broken ruins. The faint smile on Nitian Gyun's face disappeared for the first time, and a trace of confusion filled his eyes. It's strange. How did he wake up so quickly? However, at this moment, a flaming bird flew across the void and went straight to Nitian Gyun. Urgent message? Nitian Gyun frowned and grabbed it. The flame was extinguished, and a large number of sparks burst out, condensing into a line of words in the air. The remains have changed and were awakened by the blood of others. I begged the master to help. After reading it, Nitian Gyun's face suddenly showed a little surprise. How is this possible? I have instilled the blood of the heaven-defying divine warrior, and also used the tomb guard spirit, the 7 poisons demonic toad, and the 9-headed devil saint as blood guides. How could I still be suppressed by someone else's blood? As a descendant of the heaven-defying divine warrior, it was easy to extract some of the divine warrior's blood. However, in this world, whose blood could be more powerful than the blood of the heaven-defying divine warrior? There was only one answer, the World Annihilation Emperor. The first emperor of heaven and earth, the World Annihilation Emperor. His blood was the only one that could suppress the blood of the heaven-defying divine warrior and refine the remains of the ice and fire divine warrior first. Who did it? Nitian Gyun's eyes were cold, and he glanced at the holy maiden and shook his head slightly. If they knew that the blood of the divine warrior could refine the remains of the ice and fire divine warrior, why would they need to dig it up? The Eternal Night Imperial Sacred Faction flashed in his mind, and he also shook his head for the same reason. Suddenly, Nitian Gyun fixed his eyes on Suyu, and his pupils gradually narrowed. He stared at his calm face and said, "It's you?" Hearing Su Yu's silent answer, Nitian Guyun was even more convinced. He said, "Speaking of which, you have always been very strange. You were the only one who speculated that the outside world was surrounded by the strong men of the heaven-defying empire, and the first one to speculate that I would come in person. The World Annihilation Dragon and the Holy Maiden. Which one of them is not stronger than you? They did not sense it, but you did. The strangest thing is that you know that this is the ancient tomb of the Ice and Fire Divine Warrior, not some ruins." So you smiled faintly. "It's not strange at all. At first, I also thought that this was really a relic passed down from ancient times. I never thought that this was the tomb of the Divine Warrior. After all, there must be a tomb guard spirit in the tomb of the Divine Warrior." Su Yu said, "But it was not until I went to the Saint Realm and accidentally triggered the cold air that I gradually began to speculate. In fact, the tomb guard spirits have always existed. The Seven Poisons demonic toad, the legendary nine-headed demon saint, and the insects in the bodies of the lost people, they're all tomb guard spirits, but their forms are very similar to the insects." Nitian Giyun raised his eyebrows. "Why do you think so?" "Because I have seen the breath of that cold air on a tablet." So you said he had seen the Nine Emperor tablet with his own eyes. This tablet was condensed from the flesh and blood of the 9 divine warriors, and Su Yu remembered all 9 breaths. The breath in the cold air was the breath of one of the 9 divine warriors. Combined with the lost people encountered on the way, and combined with Yongya Wuming's concealment, Su Yu finally had a guess. The so-called ruins and the so-called creation-level civilization weapons were just a smokescreen. The Empire of Darkness had been secretly excavating the tomb of the Ice and Fire Divine Warrior. What surprised Su Yu even more was that the source of the cold air in the stone wall was alive, but it was in a deep sleep. After getting all the news, Su Yu took a series of actions. He attracted the Holy Maiden and the World Annihilation Dragon, but secretly asked Yongye Chushue to send the blood of the World Annihilation Divine Warrior to nourish it and wake it up. The reason why he could speculate about the heaven-defying Divine Warrior and the danger in the outside world was very simple. They always thought that the Moonwatch sect had changed the rules of the ruins. However, the rules of the ruins contained the power of the Great Path rules. Even the descendants of the 9 divine warriors could not change it, let alone outsiders like the Wizard tribe. This was an impossible thing, but it was done by someone who went against the Great Path of heaven and earth. This extraordinary defying intention could only be achieved by one kind of person: the descendants of the heaven-defying divine warrior, defying heaven, defying the Great Path, and defying all obstacles. Only people like them, who had defying intentions, could reverse the Great Path and forcibly change the rules. As for why the people of the Moonwatch sect found out about the changes in the rules of the ruins, if he guessed correctly, it should be Nitian Guyun's design. It would be best to attract the sect leader of the Moonwatch sect in person, so that he could be killed with the help of the remains of the Ice and Fire Divine Warrior. Even if he did not come in person, he would send important people. The Holy Maiden was undoubtedly an important person in the Moonwatch sect. Unfortunately, the arrival of Su Yu changed everything. After listening to Su Yu's explanation, Nitian Giyun stared at Su Yu with a trace of fear in his eyes. He thought that his calculations were flawless and far better than any of the descendants of the previous emperors. He even faintly felt that he could be compared to the former emperors. However, Su Yu was able to decisively and surely deduce many causes and effects from tiny clues. His meticulousness and calculation skills were something that even he had to admit he was inferior to. From Su Yu's point of view, he would never be able to do this. The Holy Maiden was also shocked. Su Yu's various statements made it impossible for anyone to believe that what he said was the truth. But in the end, all of the results proved what he had said. From the beginning, Su Yu had calculated every step of the way. Even the sect leader of the heaven-defying Imperial Sacred Faction was within his calculations. This great wisdom, which could determine victory from hundreds of millions of miles away, deeply moved the Holy Maiden. If the Moonwatch sect had the help of such a deity, how could they be suppressed to such a state? A strange light flashed in her eyes. If she could use this person, Then, unfortunately, Nitian Guyun obviously did not intend to keep such a person alive. I admire you very much, but unfortunately, you can't be used by me, Nitian Guyun said with a regretful expression. Suyu said lightly, don't pretend. You and I are both people with defying intentions. We are born to defy all restraints and suppression. I am a threat to you, and your defying intentions will not allow me to exist. Having been exposed, Nitian Guyun smiled faintly. His smile was very cold. Since you know that, then go to hell. At that moment, Suyu laughed. His laughter was extremely strange. Chapter 1357. Nitian Guyun raised his head and said with a smile, you want to kill me with the incomplete remains of the ice and fire divine warrior. What if I join you? Right at this moment, a loud voice that shook the frozen river bottom suddenly came from afar. Nitian Guyun's expression changed, and he said slowly, Yongye Jiuyang? Swish! A dark divine light swept over this place from afar. Half of the sky was plunged into eternal darkness. From the dark world, a middle-aged man with a purple gold crown on his head walked out slowly. His eyes were so deep that it seemed the sun, the moon, and the stars were surrounded by them. His aura was like that of a king. The Holy Virgin trembled and said with a wry smile, the Emperor of the heaven-defying empire is not enough. Now the Emperor of the Empire of Darkness, Yongye Jiuyang. One could imagine how gloomy she was feeling. Nitian Guyun stared at Suyu. Yongye Jiuyang must have sensed the aura of the ice and fire divine warrior when Suyu woke up the remains of the ice and fire divine warrior. Nitian Guyun said, Yongye Jiuyang, I set up an ambush here to capture the disciples of the Moonwatch sect, not the Empire of Darkness. You don't need to worry. Yongye Jiuyang said coldly. Really? Since you have caught the Holy Virgin, you can leave now? Nitian Guyun glanced at the Holy Virgin and hesitated. In order to change the restriction of the Great Path Law in the ancient tomb, he had paid a much higher price than the Empire of Darkness had spent thousands of years to excavate the tomb. Happy to give up now, Nitian Guyun said seriously. You can't swallow the ancient tomb of the ice and fire divine warrior all by yourself. The ancient tomb is in the territory of my empire. It is none of your business whether I can swallow it or not. Yongye Jiuyang said coldly, I know you are powerful, maybe even more powerful than me. However, I still have the remains of the ice and fire divine warrior. Nitian Guyun smiled calmly and said, so what if I have the remains of the emperor? The remains of the ice and fire divine warrior have their own spirituality, which means no one can control them. In the ancient God realm, only the leaders of the 4 imperial sacred factions can control the remains of the ice and fire divine warrior. You are wrong to expect this young man to control the remains of the ice and fire divine warrior, or the remains of an emperor. Even though the emperor's soul had perished, the remains still contained the emperor's divine powers when he was alive. How could such a shocking thing be controlled by just anyone? Without great strength or a special cultivation method, it was impossible to control the remains of an emperor. This was also why Nitian Guyun had no fear when he attacked Suyu, but he was not afraid that Suyu had occupied the remains of the divine warrior. Because Suyu could not control it at all, Yongye Jiuyang frowned slightly. Suddenly, his ears twitched as if someone was talking to him. He was surprised. Yongye Jiuyang's expression changed a few times. Then, he calmed down and said, it's just controlling the body of the ice and fire divine warrior. Wasn't that simple? I'll teach him. As he spoke, he raised his finger and shot a spot of light at Suyu, which disappeared into the space between Suyu's eyebrows. This is the secret technique of the Eternal Night lineage, the 6 fundamental laws of mind control. Only the current faction master of the Holy Gate can practice it. You meditate and comprehend it. I will block Nitian Guyun and buy you some time. Seeing this, Nitian Guyun was shocked. Yongye Jiuyang, are you crazy? The 6 fundamental laws of mind control was created by the Eternal Night, divine warrior himself. It is also the most powerful technique of the Eternal Night lineage. How could you teach it to an outsider? Yongye Jiuyang said with a faint smile, as long as I can stop you from obtaining the remains of the divine warrior, I will be satisfied. A strand of anger flashed in Nitian Guyun's eyes. Then, he attacked Suyu abruptly with his palm. Only by killing Suyu could nobody control the remains of the divine warrior. In this way, Yongye Juyong was confident that he could defeat Suyu and take away the remains of the ice and fire divine warrior. However, Yongye Juyong would never let Nitian Guyun succeed. He laughed and said, "How dare you attack a junior? You are the emperor of the heaven-defying empire. Your opponent is me, eternal knight of heaven and earth." Yongye Juyong shouted in a low voice. Then, half of the dark sky started to roll and cover the whole sky. In the darkness, the earth-shattering sound of fighting could be heard. Nitian Guyun's palm was blocked by another force. Suyu sat down with his legs crossed. Then, he started to refine the light spot that Yongye Juyong had sent into the space between his eyebrows. It contained the 6 fundamental laws of mind control created by the eternal knight divine warrior. The so-called heart here didn't refer to the heart of a living creature. Instead, it referred to the magic treasures with high quality and strong self-spirituality. The remains of the divine warrior could also be regarded as a magic treasure. After reading the function of the 6 fundamental laws of mind control, Suyu felt it was useless. With the Milky Way star sand, he could refine any magic treasure easily. However, as he read more about it, his face was filled with surprise. After a long time, Suyu opened his eyes. His eyes were filled with shock. Then, he murmured to himself, "No wonder it was created by the divine warrior. It is way too powerful." The 6 fundamental laws of mind control emphasize the word control. When fighting with an enemy, one could control the enemy's magic treasure with a single thought. When Suyu performed the 9-sun sword formation, his enemy used this method to control the 9-sun sword formation. It was not a big deal for his enemy to break through the sword formation easily. However, it would be dangerous for him to kill Suyu by surprise. According to the records of the 6 fundamental laws of mind control, no one dared to use any weapon in front of the eternal knight divine warrior. Even the World Annihilation Emperor, who ranked first in the world, didn't dare to use the World Annihilation Plate when he fought with the eternal knight divine warrior. Because the World Annihilation Plate was controlled by the eternal knight divine warrior once, the World Annihilation Emperor was almost defeated by him. This was one of the few dangerous battles that the World Annihilation Emperor used. However, controlling the Emperor-based Saint artifact was not the limit of the 6 fundamental laws of mind control. According to the Eternal Knight Divine Warrior's expectation, the ultimate goal of this skill was to control the chain of the Great Path. In his opinion, the chain of the Great Path was also an object with self-spirituality. If he continued to practice this skill, he would be able to control the chain of the Great Path. Unfortunately, the Eternal Knight Divine Warrior was limited by his own cultivation. He could only control the chain of the Great Path. However, for Suyu, even the incomplete 6 fundamental laws of mind control was still extremely powerful. Time was running out, so Suyu didn't hesitate at all. The time around him was accelerated by 1,000 times. An hour had passed in the outside world, but Suyu had spent a whole month in this world. In the darkness, the Eternal Knight Divine Warrior shouted, "Time is limited. You don't need to study all of it. You only need to study the first chapter. There are notes left by the previous faction leaders in the first chapter. With the help of these notes, an ordinary person can understand a little bit of it in half a minute. A little bit of it is enough for you to control the remains," Nitian Guyun said anxiously. Suddenly, his eyes lit up and he said with a sneer, "Yongye Juyong, as the faction leader, you didn't practice the 6 fundamental laws of mind control yourself. Why did you give it to an outsider? Ha! 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 Who knows what you were up to?" Yongye Juyong said calmly, "No matter what I am up to, it is much better than your killing intent. That demon, focus on your cultivation. Don't let him disturb your mind." Nitian Guyun's eyes lit up. Then he continued, "Ha! Ha! Yongye Juyong, I really doubt that you gave him the complete version of the 6 fundamental laws of mind control. Aren't you afraid that he will learn the complete version of the remains? At that time, you won't be able to stop him. Brother Guyun, you don't need to worry about that. Yongye Juyong said coldly. Actually, he didn't take Nitian Guyun's words seriously. Yongye Juyong knew how difficult it was to study the 6 fundamental laws of mind control. Even a powerful cultivator like him would need at least 1 month to study the first chapter according to the notes left by the previous faction leaders, let alone a junior cultivator. How much could this demon race brat comprehend in the time it took to brew a cup of tea? As time passed, the fight between the two parties became more and more fierce. The whole ice-sealed river was shaking crazily. Thousands of streams of water were stirred up. After half a cup of tea's time had passed, Suyu suddenly opened his eyes. A deep and chilling light shot out from the depths of his pupils. It seemed he could see through everything in the world. No one dared to look him in the eye. Then, Suyu looked in the direction of the Saint Realm. Rumble. In the Saint Realm, the abyss was broken. It seemed something that had been sleeping for a long time had been awakened. The horrible energy swept across the entire empire and spread to the other empires crazily. Exclamations came from the other 2 empires. It seemed some top powerhouses were also disturbed by the energy. Nitian Guyun changed his expression and stepped back quickly. Then, he looked at the Saint Realm seriously from afar. Yongye Juyong laughed loudly. Finally, we made it. He glanced at Suyu, his eyes revealing an undetectable light. His face was filled with praise. Well done. Then, he turned to Nitian Guyun and asked, what do you think? Do you still want to fight with me? Nitian Guyun was annoyed. He had paid a great price to break the restriction of the rules. However, Yongye Juyong got the upper hand. I don't believe he can control the remains to attack us. Yongye Juyong said with a sneer, since you doubt the magical effect of the 6 fundamental laws of mind control, you can have a try. Then, he gave an order to Suyu, control the remains to attack us with the extreme ice eye. Suyu nodded. With a shift of his thoughts, the divine warrior's remains, which were hundreds of millions of miles away, surged with an extremely cold and desolate power and shot out in an instant. Nitian Guyun's expression changed slightly. Then, he jumped up immediately. However, Yongye Juyong also jumped up at the same time. Bastard, what are you doing? Yongye Juyong was furious because he saw 2 streams of energy shot out at the same time. One of them was aimed at Nitian Guyun, but the other one was aimed at Suyu. Suyu said calmly, nothing. I'm just trying to save my life. Save your life? I saved your life. Yongye Juyong shouted angrily. Suyu shook his head. The 6 fundamental laws of mind control can only be practiced by the faction masters of the Eternal Night Empire. I am an outsider. Do you know what will happen to me? Even if you are merciful and don't attack me, you will still destroy my cultivation and take away my memory. However, as a family that controls an empire, you won't be so merciful. I am more likely to be killed by you to keep the secret of the 6 fundamental laws of mind control. Hearing that, Yongye Juyong's face darkened. Chapter 1358. Yongye Juyong said gloomily as he stared at Suyu coldly, you're seeking death. After saying that, Yongye Juyong was about to kill him. However, Suyu's expression was cold. The one who is seeking death is you. He formed a seal with both hands and drew a mysterious trajectory in the air. With a single glance, Yongye Juyong was so shocked that he couldn't help but shout, completion of the first part. You. It's only been half a cup of tea's time. How could you comprehend it to such an extent? Suyu did not answer. Instead, he manipulated the divine warrior's remains to unleash an even more shocking desolation power. Unlike the ice from before, this time it was a terrifying flame. Absolute fire eyes. Even Nitian Guyun's expression finally changed, and he was extremely shocked. He had thought that he had overestimated Suyu, but now he realized that he had underestimated Suyu. This kid had unknowingly controlled the Emperor's remains to such an extent. Now, even Yongye Juyong couldn't block the extreme ice eye and the absolute fire eye at the same time, let alone him. With unwillingness in his eyes, Nitian Guyun stared at Suyu coldly. Boy, don't be complacent. You have the remains of the ice and fire divine warrior in your hands. You are destined to be the prey of the 4 great empires of the ancient god realm, and even the Moonwatch sect. I have a hunch that we will meet again." After saying that, he left the frozen river without hesitation. Yongye Jiang flew into a rage. After shouting angrily, he chose to run away as well. Niti and Gyun had paid a huge price to bring the remains of the divine warrior back to the light of day, but it was all for Su Yu. Yongye Jiang, on the other hand, gave away the 6 laws of mind control, which was created by the eternal darkness divine warrior, and was as valuable as the remains of the ice and fire divine warrior. In the entire ancient god realm, there was no one else who could make the monarchs of the 2 empires suffer such a loss, yet they had no choice but to swallow their resentment. The 2 sect masters fled one after the other, but the 2 ice and fire pillars did not stop chasing them. The light beam pierced through the frozen river. Half of the river was frozen, while the other half was engulfed in raging flames. Su Yu, who was standing at the bottom of the river, raised his head to look at the marvelous sight of the fusion of ice and fire. He finally understood where the terrifying flames, which had melted the frozen river in an instant, came from. Where did the ice that froze this river all year round come from? All of this was the remains of the ice and fire divine warrior. The extreme ice eye and the absolute fire eye released their power alternately, which caused the frozen river to be unsealed once every 100 years and then fall back into the cycle of eternal freezing. After driving away the 2 monarchs, how could Su Yu dare to stay here any longer? He sped towards the center of the sacred region. The crystal ball filled with flames that I saw at the beginning should be the absolute flame eyes, right? In that case, the other one buried in the abyss should be the eye of extreme frost. This might be the remains of the divine warrior of ice and fire. There are only 2 eyes left. However, when he rushed to the abyss at the center of the sacred region, there was no trace of the absolute fire eye. The other side of the abyss had also collapsed, leaving behind an incomparably huge pit. Presumably, that was where the eye of extreme ice was located. The 2 eyes disappeared without a trace. Where did he go? Su Yu was bewildered. At that moment, Su Yu suddenly felt something tugging at his robe. Su Yu was shocked. He now had the perception of God. What would get so close to him without him noticing? If the other party wanted to kill him, wouldn't it be a piece of cake? He turned his head and looked, but there was nothing. When he looked down, he found what was tugging at his robe. It was a chubby little boy about 3 years old. He had 2 eyes of different colors. One was fiery red. The other was ice blue. The moment he looked at the 2 eyes, Su Yu's mind roared. Could this be the remains of the divine warrior? The awakened remains of the divine warrior had turned into a 3-year-old child, activating the 6 fundamental laws of mind control. Su Yu sensed the scent of the blood of the world annihilation emperor on him. "I'm hungry," the child said pitifully with his eyes wide open. Su Yu was stunned for a moment. He didn't know whether to treat him as a living creature or a weapon. His hesitation caused the child to shed 2 drops of tears, one fiery red and the other ice blue. The tears landed on the ground and burst forth with a terrible force, heading straight for Su Yu. Su Yu was so frightened that he hurriedly dodged away, not daring to come within 100,000 feet of him. Isn't this too dangerous? Su Yu was secretly shocked. If he had eaten a little more, he would have been destroyed by the 2 drops of tears. Wiping away the cold sweat on his forehead, Su Yu thought for a moment, then took out a fresh piece of golden flames forbidden wood and threw it to him. He grabbed it curiously and glanced at it, then threw it away, still yelling at Su Yu that he was hungry. Seeing that he was about to cry again, Su Yu was shocked. Suddenly, he took out a drop of the divine warrior's blood that had just been refined. The child immediately opened his mouth and revealed a smile. He hobbled over, grabbed the drop of blood in his palm, and then swallowed it with a happy smile on his face. Su Yu looked calm. His transparent eyes swept over the body, and after a long while, he sighed silently. There was only a body, no soul. He was not a living creature, but an object with the most basic spirituality. "Come with me in the future, and you won't be hungry," Su Yu said. As if he understood, the boy nodded. "I'll call you Binghua from now on," Su Yu said. The little boy laughed. He seemed to like the name very much and felt very close to it. From now on, without my permission, you are not allowed to cry, and you are not allowed to release the power in your eyes at will. With a finger in his mouth, the little boy tilted his head and nodded, as if he had understood something. So you had a headache. He didn't know whether it was a blessing or a disaster to have such a dangerous being around him. I am sleepy. When Suyu was in a dilemma, he, who was full, wanted to sleep again. This was exactly what Suyu wanted. So, he freed up a space in a Buddha pearl and put the little boy into it. In this way, Suyu left the frozen river. In the battlefield, after 1 hour, the Saint Virgin, who had been left behind, finally managed to cast a spell with difficulty to break the binding will around her. Her pretty eyes lit up. Then, she came to the vicinity of the Saint realm. After searching for a while, she was disappointed. As expected, he escaped. He mastered the remains of the ice and fire divine warrior, obtained the great magical power of the eternal night divine warrior, mastered the essence of the heaven-fighting divine warrior's combat skills, and inherited the emperor-based saint artifact of the Taiching divine warrior. I didn't expect a person could master so many things of the 9 divine warriors. The Saint Virgin was still shocked. That dragon might be right. What kind of creature is he? Why did he let the 9 divine warriors revolve around him? Also, the Saint Virgin said with longing in her eyes, "This person's wisdom is extraordinary." Even the 2 emperors of the empire played with him. Even Nitian Gyun, who prided himself on his great wisdom, was afraid of him and wanted to get rid of him. If this person could be used by the Moonwatch sect, wouldn't it be great? The Moonwatch sect desperately needed a talent who had mastered the powerful remains of the divine warriors and was also extremely smart. Unfortunately, with this person's alertness, he must have escaped and disappeared by now. However, this person seems to have hidden his identity. There's a divine path in disguise in his body. The Saint Virgin's senses were amazing. She murmured to herself. Also, the aura he exuded seems a little familiar. After thinking for a moment, the Saint Virgin looked around the ruins. Except for the collapsed abyss, the whole ruins were bare except for the space rampart. The more than 100 wizards she had brought with her, as well as several grand wizards of the Saint's side, had all been swallowed by the divine dragon of the world annihilation dragon and disappeared. They should be in that scale. However, the scale was taken by the person who hid his identity. It seems that I have to find him. After talking to herself, the Saint Virgin left the ice-sealed river bottom and returned to the Shuamon building in the Shui Nation of the Northern Territory. As soon as she entered the building, Kalen came up to her and said in surprise, "Are you injured? Where are the Grand Wizards?" Hearing this, the Saint Virgin smiled bitterly and said, "Too many things happened in the ruins. I will tell you slowly." Hearing that the remains of the ice and fire divine warrior had been unearthed, and that even the 2 emperors of the empire had shown up, Kalen was very surprised. "I didn't expect that this was a trap set by Nitian Gyun for the Moonwatch sect," Kalen said. "His scheming is too terrifying." The Saint's face was filled with hatred. Plotting against us was just a side benefit. His real goal was the remains of the ice and fire divine warrior. At this point, the Saintess could not help but laugh out loud. However, no matter how meticulous his calculations were, in the end, that mysterious fellow still got away with the remains of the ice and fire divine warrior. Ha! At least he helped us vent our anger. Kalen raised her eyebrows and said, "Are you talking about Suyu? And if it's him, then it's perfectly normal." The Holy Maiden's expression froze. "You said that the mysterious man was Suyu? Is it the old friend you met here last time?" "Yeah," Kalen said matter-of-factly. "Although he disguised himself as a living creature with a demon beast body, I'm sure it's him based on your description. In terms of wisdom, he is the most intelligent person I have ever seen. No one can compare to him." The Saint Virgin's innocent face was gradually replaced by surprise. "If it is really him, can you help me invite him to join the Moonwatch sect? He's your old friend." Kalen replied with a wry smile. "It's not that easy. He and I used to be enemies. If I try to persuade him, it will be counterproductive. Then, we can use money to persuade him," the Holy Maiden said. Kalen shook her head. "According to my understanding of him, Fame and money can't move him. Suyu had an endless supply of treasures. Now that he had obtained the remains of the ice and fire divine warrior and the reverse scale that contained all the items in the ruins, there was not much that the Moonwatch sect could give him. If you really want this man's help, you can only use his emotions. That is his only weakness. Use his emotions? The holy maiden blinked her eyes. She didn't quite understand Kalen's words. At the ice-sealed river bottom, after a while, several powerful auras appeared at the same time. Yongye Jiang, Nitian Gyun, and two middle-aged men who were almost as powerful as them. Yongye Jiang, you know this is the tomb of my ancestor, the ice and fire divine warrior. Why did you steal it? The man was tall and sturdy. His whole body was filled with the auras of ice and fire. He was Binghua Sangxing, the leader of the ice and fire imperial sacred faction. Yongye Jiang said calmly, when the 9 divine warriors died, their remains were scattered all over the world. We holy factions have an agreement that whoever finds their remains first has the right to excavate it. Why are you blaming me now? Chapter 1359. Did we agree to inform each other? Since we didn't, the agreement is still valid. Yongye Jiang said coldly. He was already in a bad mood after being tricked by Suyu. Yongye Jiang, if you want to start a war, I will fight you to the end. Binghua Sangxing was also irritated. Please calm down. Now is not the time to quarrel with each other. The only middle-aged woman among the 4 people said calmly. Her facial features were delicate and pretty. Even though she was already middle-aged, it was still difficult to conceal her charm. Her temperament was elegant and seemed to be floating in the air. The 2 faction leaders looked at each other and snorted. Then, they stopped arguing for the sake of this female faction leader. The female faction leader looked at Nitian Gyun and asked, does this man really have the yin and yang Tai Chi wings of our Tai Chi ancestor? Nitian Gyun nodded. Yes, he can travel hundreds of millions of miles in an instant. Only the yin and yang Tai Chi wings, the number 1 Emperor-based Saint artifact, can do that. Then, Nitian Gyun looked at the beautiful woman up and down with a hint of possessiveness in his eyes. Then, he said, Yunwan, why don't you let me handle this matter? If I can capture this man alive, I will return the yin and yang Tai Chi wings to you. Tai Chi Yunwan said with a faint smile, don't bother, faction leader. The yin and yang Tai Chi wings belong to our ancestors, and they are not in the hands of outsiders. The Tai Chi faction will try our best to get them back. Then, she looked at the other 2 people and said, I guess we all have the same goal. Binghua Sangxing wanted to get the remains of the ice and fire divine warrior back. Yongye Jiang wanted to kill Suyu to prevent the 6 hollow techniques from being circulated. As for Nitian Gyun, he was worried about Suyu's scheme. If he didn't kill Suyu, he wouldn't be satisfied. As for Tai Chi Yunwan, she wanted to get the yin and yang Tai Chi wings back. The 4 faction leaders of the Imperial Sacred Faction reached a consensus. The 4 great empires will cover all the areas of the ancient god realm. Once this man shows up, we will set up a trap to catch him. Nitian Gyun said with a murderous look, I suggest we form a coalition army to investigate, find and kill this man. Yongye Jiang agreed with his suggestion. Since this man could enter the ruins, he must be somewhere nearby. He must be either a citizen of the Empire of Darkness or a citizen of the heaven-defying Empire. Nitian Gyun nodded deeply. Yes. Most importantly, this man has the Emperor-based Saint artifact and many magic treasures of the Shui Nation in the northern region. I suggest that we investigate his real identity from the Shui Nation in the northern region first. Tai Chi Yunwan and Binghua Sangxing had no objections. Suyu had no idea that he had become a wanted man in the entire ancient god realm. Once his identity as a dragon-headed man with a human body was exposed, there would be no place for Suyu in the vast ancient god realm. At this moment, he was hiding in an inconspicuous inn in the Snowman Tower, taking stock of his gains from this trip. First, he had obtained the blueprint of the World Annihilation Plate. Other than that, he had also obtained many ancient weapon blueprints. Second, the Tomb of the Myriad Gods. Third, the 6 laws of mind control. 4th, the remains of the ice and fire divine warrior. 5th, the reverse scale of the world annihilation dragon. His gains were far greater than his initial expectations. However, it was more troublesome than he had imagined. If I'm not wrong, I won't be able to stay in the ancient god domain any longer. I can only hide outside the ancient god domain's range. Suyu sighed. However, there's still some time before my identity as a dragon-headed man with a human body is exposed. I'm not in a hurry to escape. Let's deal with the reverse scale of the world annihilation dragon first. As he spoke, a dark dragon scale appeared on Suyu's chest. Compared with ordinary dragon scales, this scale was harder and had a deeper color. The most amazing thing was that it contained a drop of the world annihilation dragon's blood. Indeed, as Nitian Gyun said, this is a good thing. Suyu estimated the hardness of this reverse scale. It might be able to easily withstand the attack of a monarch of an empire. At that time, Nitian Gyun had used a killing method, but he still failed to leave the slightest injury on the scale. Its hardness was evident. As a defensive item, it was definitely an excellent magic weapon. All of a sudden, Suyu felt a faint space fluctuation flickering within the reverse scale. Is there a space inside the reverse scale? Suyu was surprised. His soul explored it, and he couldn't help but be surprised. There was a whole world inside the reverse scale. All the creatures and items that were swallowed by the world annihilation dragon were swept into this space. The Saint Lady brought 100 wizards, 8 great wizards of the Saint. Yongye Wuheng, Yongye Chushue, and Yongye Wuming, who was left behind by Suyu. Finally, there was a beautiful woman with an excellent figure. She was the princess of the Xue nation in the Northern Territory, Xue Xiaoman. All those who entered the ruins and failed to escape were sucked into this space. They were wrapped in a dragon's breath and lost consciousness. They didn't know where they were. After thinking for a while, Suyu left the Xue Man building and came to the deserted outside world. With a thought, he opened the reverse scale. Apart from Yongye Wuming, who knew his identity, he released all the other living beings. Suyu immediately put away the reverse scale, removed his disguise, and returned to his real body. He pretended to be unconscious and fell to the ground. After some time, there was a groan. Xue Xiaoman was the first to wake up. She stood up shakily, wrapped in a man's dress that she had taken from somewhere. She opened her beautiful eyes, looked around, and saw the unconscious people on the ground. What happened? I remember they were swallowed by something, Xue Xiaoman said in confusion. Suddenly, she caught a glimpse of someone among the unconscious people. In an instant, her eyebrows were filled with anger and anger. She gritted her teeth, and her clear eyes shot out flames. It's you. Not only did he take away all her treasures, but he also pressed her under the myriad bone mountain. Xue Xiaoman would never forget this great humiliation. Pervert, this is the will of heaven. Xue Xiaoman trembled slightly, not knowing whether she was angry or pleasantly surprised. Suyu rolled his eyes secretly. Damn it, what a coincidence that this woman woke up first. If he had known this would happen, he would have taken off her clothes and thrown her on the road. As she spoke, Xue Xiaoman rushed over angrily and clasped Suyu's shoulder. Judging from her posture, she was ready to capture Suyu alive and torture him slowly to vent her hatred. Suyu was helpless. It seemed that he had to intervene. However, if he woke up first, he would have to explain why they were lying here. It would be very easy to arouse suspicion. Right at this moment, a cold light struck, piercing through the air and stabbing towards Xue Xiaoman. Xue Xiaoman was shocked. She gave up on Suyu and leaped forward 1,000 feet in a flash. When she turned her head, her pretty face froze. Yongye Wuheng, when did you wake up? At the critical moment, Yongye Wuheng intervened. About the same time as you, Yongye Wuheng said casually. Xue Xiaoman cupped her fists. Prince Wuheng, please do me a favor and allow me to take this man back. Why? Yongye Wuheng asked. Xue Xiaoman was speechless. Could she tell him that all her treasures were taken away by this man? Then she told him that she was stripped naked and suppressed under the myriad bone mountain. I have no comment. However, I will never do anything harmful to the Empire, Shui Xiaoman said. Yongye Wuheng shook his head lightly. Sorry, I can't let you take him away. What kind of joke was this? This was his betrothed brother-in-law. So what if he robbed the Emperor-based Saint artifact of the Xuen Nation of the North Territory? It was no big deal, even if he took you away. This brother-in-law of his was a dragon among men. Yongye Wuheng was one of the few people who knew that the mysterious demon who resisted the World Annihilation Dragon was Su Yu. Now, of course, he had to protect Su Yu. Shui Xiaoman shouted, Yongye Wuheng, don't make things difficult for me. Otherwise, Yongye Wuheng's eyes turn cold. Otherwise what? But you, if you insist on taking action, don't blame me for being rude. Seeing Yongye Wuheng's seriousness, Shui Xiaoman was going crazy. She couldn't understand why Yongye Wuheng was protecting her. What good would it do for Yongye Wuheng? At this time, Yongye Chuxue also woke up slowly. Seeing this, Shui Xiaoman could only give up for the time being and leave with hatred in her heart. Before leaving, she said coldly, Tell Su Yu that we are not finished. Yongye Chuxue opened her misty eyes and saw Shui Xiaoman leaving these words with shame and hatred. She asked blankly, Brother, what happened? Yongye Wuheng laughed. Nothing. By the way, help Su Yu up. What? Yongye Chuxue gave Yongye Wuheng a strange look. In the past, her brother had always been very protective of her and never allowed any man to get close to her. This time, he asked her to help a man, which really confused her. What are you waiting for? Go and infuse your divine power into him to treat his injuries. Yongye Chuxue was confused, but she still did as she was told. After treating his injuries, she found that Su Yu's body was full of injuries, which made Yongye Chuxue murmur, It's so strange. I didn't see him after entering the ruins, but when he came back, he was injured all over. Humph. Yongye Wuheng smiled and said nothing. He thought to himself, Sister, those injuries were caused by the battle with the World Annihilation Dragon. Although he didn't know what happened after he was swallowed by the dragon's mouth, Su Yu was still alive, which was enough to show that he had survived the divine dragon devour with his own strength. Thinking of this, Yongye Wuheng was even more amazed. He was only a stage 4 mortal fairy, but he already had such terrible strength. What would happen when he became a god in the future? This person's potential is unimaginable if he is trained by the royal family of Yongye. If my sister has such a husband, as your brother, I can rest assured, Yongye Wuheng thought to himself. During the healing process, the people in the coma gradually woke up, including Su Yu. Hundreds of wizards also woke up one after another. In view of the special circumstances at the moment, both sides did not fight, waiting for their people to wake up. After a long time, both sides woke up. Obviously, the wizards were not in the mood to fight with them here. First, they had a level 5 deity like Yongye Wuheng among them. Second, they were in the territory of the ancient god realm, where strong masters could come at any time. Third, they had lost contact with the Holy Maiden. Let's go. Under the leadership of the Grand Wizard, 100 wizards quickly retreated and disappeared into the snow. The creatures of the ancient god realm breathed a sigh of relief and left, leaving only Yongye Chuxue and Su Yu. Chapter 1360. Su Yu considered his own situation. It was a wise choice to leave the ancient god realm as soon as possible. Going to the Lost Nation to hide was not necessarily a bad choice. Of course, I have no problem, but has Princess Chuxue changed her mind? Yongye Chuxue thought that with such a drastic change, she needed to make some preparations. Unexpectedly, Yongye Wuheng agreed immediately. Of course, no problem. I'll leave my sister to Brother Su. Yongye Chuxue raised her eyebrows and stared at her brother suspiciously. Su Yu said, All right, but due to certain reasons, I can't return to the Empire to fulfill the promised Emperor-based Saint artifact. I wonder if, no problem. Yongye Wuheng agreed without hesitation. Brother Su, which Emperor-based Saint artifact do you want? Su Yu was a little overwhelmed by Yongye Wuheng's enthusiastic attitude. He wondered if there was a conspiracy behind this. He could not help but probe, The Great Desolate Furnace ranked 45th. Well said. I'll personally go back to Dynasty and get it. Yongye Wuheng laughed. I will give this to my sister. As long as the escort mission is completed, she will get it to you on the spot. Huh? Yongye Chushue opened her mouth and looked at her brother in disbelief. How could her calm brother do something so irrational? What if Suyu had evil intentions along the way? How could she have known that her brother was actually hoping that Suyu would have evil intentions in the middle of the journey and punish his sister? Even Suyu was surprised. He had a strange feeling in his heart. What was Yongye Wuheng up to? Brother Su, it will take at least a month for me to go and come back. During this month, please take care of my sister. After saying that, Yongye Wuheng immediately left, as if he didn't want to stay any longer. Suyu and Yongye Chushue were left looking at each other in dismay. Yongye Chushue stared at Suyu with her beautiful eyes and asked in a charming voice, What did you offer my brother? It's the first time I've seen him treat someone with such warmth. Suyu shrugged. I was going to ask you, did your brother take the wrong medicine? In his memory, Yongye Wuheng was a very profound man. Yongye Chushue frowned and shouted, Don't speak ill of my brother. His brain is just damaged. Suyu was speechless. Mystic Crystal Mountain Range. In the depths of the fissure, there was a gigantic pitch-black dragon coiled on the huge stone door. The moment the reverse scale was broken, it suddenly opened its huge dragon eyes. A terrifying dragon breath naturally leaked out and swept towards the outside of the crack, as if it wanted to burn the whole world. The Nine Emperor tablet trembled as words of the heavenly book floated out and pressed down, blocking the ferocious dragon breath. Behind the stone door, the suppressed woman seemed to sense something and said indifferently, You failed, right? She knew that the World Annihilation Dragon was not willing to give up, so he turned his reverse scale into a doppelganger to chase after her. The World Annihilation Dragon said coldly, This man is too cunning and good at scheming. He attracted the descendant of the heaven-defying divine warrior and crushed me. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to escape. A defeat is a defeat, just like how our defeat is the suppression of millions and millions of years. There's no need to explain. The woman said indifferently. The World Annihilation Dragon spat out his dragon breath unwillingly and finally calmed down. His huge dragon eyes were filled with a trace of light. However, I found something interesting on this trip. This person seems to be very special. Not only does he have a familiar aura, but I also see the shadow of that person in him. Back then, it was also him who used the superior deity as the divine Laksana and shocked the ancient god void. You mean the genius who betrayed the temple of heaven? The World Annihilation Dragon nodded his huge dragon head, and ancient memories seemed to reverberate in his eyes. I remember that he was the oldest book deity in the world. It's him. The voice of the woman in the door revealed a trace of surprise, and then immediately became regretful. It's a pity that he should have become the messenger of the heavenly law, but he had to rebel against the Pathmaster and steal the book of first heavens. The World Annihilation Dragon sighed. Yes, he should have been one of us, but unfortunately, he made the worst decision. After a long time, the woman in the door said, Since we have found his aura, when we come out, we will capture him and hand him over to the Pathmaster. Suyu, who had no idea what was going on, accompanied Yongye Chushue to the capital of the Shui Nation in the Northern Territory. The Lost Nation is very dangerous. Apart from Moonwatch sect, there are also strange creatures that have never been seen in the ancient god realm. I need to collect some special materials, Yongye Chushue explained. The Lost Nation was the original territory of this world. In the words of the ancient god realm, the Lost Nation was the indigenous land. Suyu said placidly, Whatever, just don't let me run into the royal family of the Shui Nation in the Northern Territory. Yongye Chushue said disapprovingly, He just killed Shui Qingchen. What was so great about it? The imperial family of the Shui Nation in the northern region has many talents. Shui Qingchen is dispensable. Don't worry, the imperial family won't do anything to you because of Shui Qingchen. As for Shui Xiaoman, Yongye Chushue said suspiciously, I don't think you just killed her brother. Suyu felt guilty under her gaze, so he changed the topic as if nothing had happened. Where are we going now? Go to the liaison department I've set up here. Just leave the procurement to them. Soon, they arrived at a prosperous area in the capital, where there was a shop named Tianu. As soon as they entered the shop, a young man came out to greet them. Greetings, Princess Chushue. This man, who was a level 5 deity, was very powerful. Considering his age, he was a rare genius. Yongye Chushue had sent him here to take charge of this shop. Apparently, she thought highly of him. Get up, prepare a table of dishes and these things. Yongye Chushue handed him a jade pendant, which contained information about the things she needed to prepare. The young man took the jade pendant and glanced at it. Then, he said with a confident smile, Princess, don't worry. These are the specialties of the Shui Nation in the Northern Territory. I prepared them for you for a long time. I'll bring them to you right away. Please have a look. Then, he looked at Suyu, who was standing beside Yongye Chushue, and asked hesitantly, Princess, may I ask how many servings you have prepared? Yongye Chushue looked at Suyu and said to herself, My royal brother values this man for a reason. I'd better be polite to him. Servings for 2 people. What? The young man raised his eyebrows slightly. When he looked at Suyu again, there was a hint of doubt in his eyes. Yongye Chushue rarely got along with men. Even the important members of the royal family of the other 3 imperial sacred factions rarely had the opportunity to get close to her. However, the identity of the young man in front of him was unknown. Moreover, Yongye Chushue had taken a liking to him, which made him feel indignant. He could not help but cast a questioning look at Suyu. Suyu smiled and disdained to argue with him. Then, he entered the box side by side with Yongye Chushue. Is this man reliable? Suyu asked after entering the box. Yongye Chushue looked at him strangely. You mean Hua Chun? Did you find anything wrong with him? No, it's just that I'm more sensitive to hostility, Suyu said. Yongye Chushue said indifferently. It's normal for him to be hostile to you. What you and I are doing now can attract hostility from anywhere in the Empire. As one of the most outstanding young talents of the Empire of Darkness, Yongye Chushue not only had amazing talent, but also a gorgeous appearance. She was pursued by countless people, so it was normal for Suyu to be regarded with hostility. Suyu touched his nose and said solemnly, What I'm talking about is another kind of hostility, the kind with killing intent. Suyu wasn't speaking without thinking. Instead, when the youth revealed a doubtful expression, another wave of hostile, murderous intent flashed past him. Suyu caught it secretly, but it disappeared without a trace. Even now, Suyu still felt as if he was being stared at by something. Yongye Chushue blushed and glared at him. Then, she calmed down and carefully sensed the surroundings. After a long time, she shook her head seriously. If there is such hostility, it's impossible for me not to feel it. You are overthinking, aren't you? Suyu smiled, and there was a glimmer of light in the depths of his eyes. Suyu had only experienced this kind of feeling of being stared at in secret, but he couldn't figure it out. That was in the Imperial City of Darkness. He was followed by a black shadow, but Suyu couldn't figure it out no matter how hard he tried. Soon after, Suyu was ambushed by the Iksha King. Now, this feeling appeared again, which really surprised Suyu. Taishang, who was that? Suyu murmured. Before the Iksha King died, he had said this name. After a pause, Suyu tentatively asked, Princess Chushue, in the Empire of Darkness, is there a person named Taishang? This person should be very prominent. Hearing this, Yongye Chushue thought about it carefully and shook her head. No, if there is such a prominent person, I can't not know about him. Suyu couldn't help but frown deeply when he found that she was not lying. Who was the so-called Taishang? Dong! Dong! Right at this moment, a chaotic sound came from outside the private room. Several powerful auras rushed out of the private room. Vaguely, Hua Chen's angry roar could be heard. The people outside were aggressive, as if they had come with bad intentions. Only Yongye Chushue was calm. She just felt a little headache. Here comes a troublesome person. Bang! All of a sudden, the door of the private room was kicked to pieces, and a burly, boorish man dressed in a long robe embroidered with dragons stormed in with 4 god-level attendants. This man was not only strong, but also very strong. He had reached the peak of the level 5 deity level and was about to break through to the level 4 deity level. As soon as he entered the door, he laughed loudly. "Sister Chushua, you came to the Shui kingdom without telling me. Look, as soon as I heard you were here, I put down what I was doing and came here immediately." As he said this, he sat next to Yongye Chushua. His eyes were full of infatuation, and his behavior was very presumptuous. Yongye Chushua frowned. "Shui Zhongbao, please be respectful. I didn't invite you in." Shui Zhongbao laughed. "You are right. Those who should not come in should get out." After saying that, he punched Su Yu without warning. The punch was wrapped with very pure divine energy. It seemed like a casual punch, but contained half of Shui Zhongbao's strength. Without knowing Su Yu's real strength, this punch was definitely a fatal blow to a stage for mortal fairy. "Sister Chushua asked you to get out of here. Get out of here." Shui Zhongbao looked at Su Yu coldly. His eyes were wide open like the eyes of a cheetah. Chapter 1361. Su Yu was calm and collected. He held the wine glass with one hand and took a sip. Even though he was hit by the fist energy, he remained motionless. Chi! Chi! Su Yu's body was suddenly covered by a layer of ice-blue dreamy luster. Like a sponge, it absorbed the seemingly strong fist energy completely. Ice-blue divine armor? You are Shangwan Feiyu's man. Although Shui Zhongbao was rude, he knew the origin of Su Yu's defense at a glance. "Well, if you can take this blow, I will admit that you are qualified to stay." It was obvious that the Shui nation of the North Territory didn't take Shangwan Feiyu seriously. He pulled out a meteor hammer from his back, emitting a chilling aura. This is made of the 10,000-year-old black ice from the bottom of the ice-sealed river. If a level 6 deity is hit by it, he will lose a layer of skin. If you can take this blow, you can stay. If you can't, get out of here. Shui Zhongbao stared at Su Yu overbearingly. At this time, Yongye Chushua was finally annoyed. She slammed the table with her delicate hand and shouted, "How dare you!" Her shout shocked the 4 deities. They didn't even dare to breathe. Yongye Chushua stared at Shui Zhongbao angrily. "Do you still have any respect for me?" He came uninvited, knocked open the door of the box, and attacked her people without saying a word. Did he still have any respect for her identity as a princess? Shui Zhongbao put on a fake smile. "Princess, please calm down. I just think this guy is not a good guy. He is probably up to no good. So, I have to get rid of this big trouble for you." Then, Shui Zhongbao said to himself, "Princess, please calm down. I, Shui Zhongbao, will get rid of this overconfident lecher for you." After saying that, he waved the dangerous meteor hammer in his hand and said with a cold smile, "Are you ready? It's up to you whether you can take this blow or not." Su Yu looked at him as if he was looking at an idiot. "That's weird. Why do I have to take this blow from you? Isn't it more direct to kick you out?" "Ha ha ha." Shui Zhongbao laughed. "I give you a blow to show you your strength. Okay, take this blow." With a flick of his wrist, the meteor hammer turned into a streak of cold light and flew out. They were so close to each other, and Su Yu's cultivation level was much lower than his opponent's. How could it be easy for him to resist? However, Su Yu was sitting steadily. His upper body did not move at all, but his right hand, which was under the table, was secretly forming a seal. A wave of mysterious and profound energy swept across the area. A shocking scene occurred. The meteor hammer in Shui Zhongbao's hand suddenly went out of control and smashed towards himself. And fast, ruthless, and accurate. Shui Zhongbao was caught off guard. How could he guard against his own weapon? In an instant, more than half of his head was smashed and blood splattered everywhere. "Your Highness!" The 4 attendants were shocked and hurried over to support the heavily injured Shui Zhongbao. Even with such an injury, Shui Zhongbao's body did not die. Instead, waves of cold air gushed out from his blood vessels, healing his wounds quickly. Not long after, his broken head was restored to its original state. However, the impact of the strike just now on Shui Zhongbao was self-evident. Although his body had recovered, his aura was much weaker. Did you do this? Shui Zhongbao was stunned. Finally, he fixed his eyes on Su Yu and questioned him with uncertainty. Su Yu shrugged and said, Prince Shui's martial arts are superb. Before you hurt your enemy, you hurt yourself 10 times first. Such a ruthless move. If it hits your enemy, it must be earth-shattering, right? Puffed. Yongye Chushua, who had a cold look on her face, could not help but burst into laughter. However, she was also curious about the strange situation just now. The meteor hammer was Shui Zhongbao's famous weapon. There was no way that it could have been used wrongly. There must be something wrong. She stared at Su Yu with her beautiful eyes without blinking. Her intuition told her that it was Su Yu. Shui Zhongbao was greatly humiliated. He was furious, but he did not dare to use the meteor hammer again. After staring at Su Yu for a while and committing his appearance to memory, Shui Zhongbao shook off the attendants who were supporting him and shouted in a low voice, "Let's go." The moment he walked out of the box with his head lowered, a fierce light flashed in the depths of his eyes. Thud! Thud! Hua Chun ran all the way in panic and knelt in front of the box. "I failed to protect you. Please forgive me, Your Highness." Yongye Chushua said, "Forget it. Shui Zhongbao has been arrogant for a long time. He even looked down on my brother. It is reasonable that you cannot stop him." Hearing this, Hua Chun breathed a sigh of relief, but he felt very strange. Shui Zhongbao was such a powerful guy, but it seemed that he had suffered a great loss before he left. Who could be so powerful? He looked up at Su Yu with disdain and ignored him. In the end, he still thought that it was Yongye Chushua who did it. After all, she was a member of the royal family. It was normal for her to have 1 or 2 powerful treasures to deter the enemy. "Have you prepared all the materials I asked you to?" Hua Chen hurriedly took out a cosmos sack and handed it over respectfully. Yongye Chushua glanced at it, and her indifferent face showed a touch of joy. "Oh, an 80-year-old soul-stabilizing wood? You really put in a lot of effort." "Soul-stabilizing wood?" Su Yu cast a questioning look at her. Yongye Chushua waved her hand, and Hua Chun stepped back. Before he left, he glanced at Su Yu vaguely, feeling indignant. What was so special about this man that Princess Chushua treated him like this? She waved her hand casually to set up an isolation seal. Yongye Chushua said, "The soul-stabilizing wood is a divine wood that can counter the sorcery of the Moonwatch sect. With this wood, it can counteract the sorcery power." So you had witnessed how tricky sorcery power could be. They were both at level 5, but Shui Xiaomon's magical powers could not resist the sorcery of the Grand Wizard. If she had not sacrificed the peacock plume at the last moment, she would have fallen into the hands of the Moonwatch sect. Most of the magical powers of the ancient god realm were ineffective against sorcery power. If there was no way to deal with it, the people of the ancient god realm would be at a disadvantage when facing the wizards. Soul-stabilizing wood is one of the few divine woods that can restrain sorcery power. It was born in the Lost Nation and is naturally resistant to sorcery power. The older it is, the stronger its resistance will be, Yongye Chushua said. This 80-year-old soul-stabilizing wood can help us a lot. So he was surprised. It is just an 80-year-old divine wood. You are the princess of the empire, so it is possible for you to find 800-year-old or even 8,000-year-old divine wood, right? Yongye Chushua rolled her beautiful eyes. Do you think soul-stabilizing wood can grow everywhere? It can only grow in the environment of the Lost Nation, and its lifespan is only 90 years. It will wither after 1 year. The Lost Nation is very dangerous. Strange beasts run amok, and many of them feed on the soul-stabilizing wood. Wood that is more than 50 years old is usually guarded by powerful beasts. And this is not including the elusive Moonwatch sect. Pharmacists who collect the soul-stabilizing would have a very high death rate, and the amount of soul-stabilizing wood they can collect is very rare. An 80-year-old one like this is a rare treasure that can only be found once in hundreds of years. Hearing this, Su Yu was deep in thought. Do you have the seeds of the soul-stabilizing wood? Yongye Chushua was surprised for a moment. Then, She thought Suyu was not convinced and wanted to plant it himself. She shook her head and laughed. Well, I don't have the seeds, but I have 2 roots. I will give them to you. She took out 2 earthy yellow roots from her chinquin bag, and they did not look very attractive. Suyu saw that they were extraordinary and said in surprise, "What? It seems that they can devour souls." Yonya Chushue was surprised and stared at Suyu strangely. Only the soul-stabilizing wood that was more than 80 years old could absorb souls. However, only the soul perception of deities or above could detect this difference. How did Suyu know this? Just now, he didn't even know what the soul-stabilizing wood was. My brother values this person so much, and it is not unreasonable, Yonya Chushue said to herself. After putting away the 2 roots, Suyu said thoughtfully, now that we have got the materials we want, I think we'd better leave as soon as possible. Yonya Chushue frowned. Does the secret surveillance still exist? Suyu said, yes, but I want to leave. I want to guard against the Shui nation of the North Territory. This is not a place to stay for a long time. Although Yonya Chushue had some complaints about this, she did not want to meet Shui Zhongbao again. So, she nodded and said, okay. After cleaning up, Suyu and Yonya Chushue went downstairs. Unexpectedly, before they went out, a group of young people walked in from outside the hall. All of them were full of chilly energy, with powerful auras and pure bloodlines. Among them, Suyu was even familiar with one of them. Yonya Chushue was also surprised. She looked around at the crowd and said, the princes and princesses of the Shui nation have come. The people present were all the princes and princesses of the Shui nation of the North Territory. Among them was Shui Zhongbao, who had just left, and a beautiful woman with cold eyes. Shui Xiaoman. However, Shui Xiaoman was not the leader. Standing at the very front, the one with the noblest temperament was actually a level 4 prince. He was just over 30 years old. Even so, the talent he showed was amazing and terrible, enough to compete with Yonya Wuing. He was wearing a feather robe and had an elegant temperament. He said with a smile, I heard that the princess is coming, so I came to see you. Yonya Chushue sneered secretly. The Shui nation of the North Territory was no longer loyal to the Empire. The Empire was well aware of their secret dealings with the heaven-defying Empire. Usually, when she came here, she did not receive the treatment of so many princes and princesses. Now that they had come here, it was obvious that they did not come with good intentions. There is no need for me to see you. I am tired and have to go back to the Empire. I will not accompany you. If there is anything in the store that you value, I will give you a discount, Yonya Chushue said calmly. Hua Chun, serve them well. After saying that, she walked out of the store with light steps. Heh. The elegant young man stretched out his arm and blocked Yonya Chushue's way. He said with a faint smile, if the Princess Chushue leaves like this, it will be seen as a disgrace to the Empire. Yonya Chushue's eyes turned cold. Get out of my way. The elegant young man said calmly as if he would never get angry. Princess, please give us some face. We will hold a banquet in the woods of drunken immortals for you. I'm not interested, Yonya Chushue said coldly. The scholarly youth was still smiling faintly, but the smile had disappeared. If Princess Chushue insists on not agreeing, my royal brothers and sisters will not agree. Hearing the threat in his words, the cold light in Yonya Chushue's eyes intensified. However, as the daughter of the emperor, she was not short of scheming. Their enemies outnumbered them, and they were in their territory. If they had a face-to-face conflict, they would be at a disadvantage. Since Prince Yun insists, I will enjoy the banquet with you, Yonya Chushue said. Prince Yun said with a smile, Thank you, Princess. We will meet in the woods of drunken immortals tomorrow night. We will await your arrival. With that, Prince Yun left with the other princes and princesses. Brother Yun, you are the best. You have subdued that woman, Shui Zhongbao said flatteringly. The smile on Prince Yun's face disappeared, replaced by a gloomy expression. Humph! How dare she come to the Snow Kingdom after killing Shui Qingchen? Does she really think the Empire is still the same as before? Hearing this, the princes either sneered or looked at him expectantly. Prepare the banquet well tomorrow. We must let the princess know that even if she dies here, the Empire will not dare to do anything to us. Prince Yin said with a gloomy expression. Chapter 1362. Prince Yin smiled sinisterly. Of course you can. Not only you, but the rest of you can also have a taste of Princess Chuxue if you're interested. After all, she is the most beautiful princess of the Empire. The princes swallowed hard as their eyes burned with fire. The mere thought of Princess Chuxue's beauty and identity made their hearts pound. Shui Xiaoman frowned slightly. As a woman herself, she was disgusted by the idea of dealing with a woman in such a manner. However, she dared not refute after glancing at Prince Yin. Brother Yun, I only ask that Su Yu be handed over to me. Prince Yin nodded nonchalantly and said, Sure. However, you must treat him well and let him know the consequences of taking something from the Shui nation of the North Territory. Shui Xiaoman nodded. That's exactly what I was thinking. However, Shui Xiaoman's hatred for Su Yu is far greater for stripping her of her clothes than for taking away her weapon. The latter was due to her inferior strength, so she could not blame anyone else. The former, however, was a deliberate humiliation. Prince Yin nodded with a sinister smile. The Shui nation of the North Territory has been a subject for nearly 1,000,000 years. Father has finally decided to join the heaven-defying empire. The opportunity to break away will begin at the banquet at the Woods of Drunken Immortals tomorrow. We will use Princess Chuxue's blood as a sacrifice to the birth of the Shui nation of the North Territory. The Shui nation of the North Territory was going to rebel. The Shui nation of the North Territory is going to rebel, Su Yu said softly after a long pause in the shop. Surprisingly, Yongye Chuxue did not refute him. The truth was right before her eyes. The princes had openly threatened her and even sent several level 5 deities to besiege the Tiannu firm afterward. What else could it be if not rebellion? After a long while, Yongye Chuxue said, The banquet will not end well. I have a bad feeling about tomorrow night's banquet at the Woods of Drunken Immortals. Su Yu smiled. It's more than bad. I think you won't be able to return. Glancing at her beautiful face and figure, Su Yu said meaningfully, I don't know how I will die, but I'm afraid it will be difficult for you, Princess. Upon hearing that, Princess Yongye shuddered. Her reputation was well known. If the Shui nation of the North Territory really rebelled, she could easily imagine what would happen to her. If you want to leave, I can send you off, Su Yu said calmly. Even if there were a large number of experts surrounding them, with the Tai Chi Yin-Yang wings, even the emperors of the 4 great empires would not be able to stop them. Why should I go? Unexpectedly, Yongye Chuxue, who looked weak, had a resolute look on her face. I'm the princess of the empire. Why should I lower my head to a bunch of traitors? Yongye Chuxue's eyes flashed fiercely. I'm not only going to the Woods of Drunken Immortals, but I'm also going there with great fanfare. Su Yu's eyes lit up, and his eyes were filled with praise. Ha, well said. If you run away now, I'll really look down on you. Don't worry, I will go with you tomorrow. If they want to see blood, I will let them see a grand bloodbath. Su Yu smiled coldly and dangerously. Yongye Chuxue said grumpily, It's good enough that you can protect yourself. How dare you talk nonsense? Su Yu smiled and returned to the house that had been arranged for him. He began to speculate about the thoughts of the king of the Shui nation in the Northern Territory. It seems that the rebellion of the 99 tribes in the South region finally made the Shui nation of the North region pay attention to the rebellion, Su Yu thought to himself. The rebellion of the South region was triggered by a mysterious tomb guard spirit. He is not simple at all. The rebellion of the North region must have something to do with Nitian Guyun. I'm afraid it will be difficult to put out the flames of war between the 2 rebellions in the North and the South. At least, it will take more than a day. How can the West and East regions be stable if the rebellion continues for a long time? Even if the Empire of Ice and Fire and the Empire of Tai Ching don't interfere, it is hard to guarantee that the forces of the East and West regions won't have their own armies, Su Yu murmured. The situation of the Empire of Darkness is precarious, and it is very likely that it will fall apart. After some speculation, Su Yu seemed to have seen the scene of the Empire of Darkness falling apart, and finally, the three great empires joined forces to destroy Yongyejuyang. However, this had nothing to do with Su Yu, and he would not help the Empire of Darkness. After all, Yongyejuyang was determined to kill Su Yu. The internal strife of the ancient god realm is imminent. The Lost Nation is the safest place. I have to go this time. Su Yu finally made up his mind to go to the Lost Nation. Su Yu calmed himself down and took out the reverse scale. Yongya Wuming was the only creature left in the space of the reverse scale. The rest of the creatures were inexhaustible resources. Su Yu moved all of them to the world of the martial arts tower. Wow, haha, so many resources. Boy, are you robbing people again? The black Kylan popped its head out, its eyes shining like a miser. Su Yu rolled his eyes. Sort of wait. Suddenly, the black Kylan was startled, and its face changed dramatically. This is not the Star River. Yes, it is the Lost God Realm, which is the battlefield of the 9 Emperors, Su Yu said calmly, but he was observing the black Kylan's expression. Sure enough, when the black Kylan heard the words 9 Emperors, a complicated expression flashed across its face. There was a hint of pity and sadness. However, these expressions flashed by quickly and were well hidden. It said, "Boy, you are so lucky to have found the Lost God Realm. This place is more prosperous than the Star River. You should cherish it. If there is a great opportunity, you may get unexpected gains, such as an Emperor-based Saint artifact." Gains? Su Yu touched his chin. The Emperor-based Saint artifacts that were ranked at the bottom were no longer of interest to him. After saying that, the Black Kylan retracted its head. The Black Kylan is indeed related to the 9 Emperors. Su Yu had been guessing the identity of this Kylan, but he did not expect it to be related to the 9 Emperors. Among the 9 Emperors, there was an Emperor, the Kylan Divine Warrior. He did not know if the Black Kylan and the Kylan Divine Warrior were related. Su Yu looked at the reverse scale again and transferred the remaining Yongya Wuming into the Buddha bead. Holding the reverse scale in his hand, Su Yu gently pressed it against his chest. A sense of flesh and blood surged, and the reverse scale sank into Su Yu's chest obediently, without any resistance. A drop of the world annihilation dragon blood hidden in the reverse scale melted into Su Yu's body bit by bit. Su Yu only felt that his body was gradually filled with a majestic and unimaginable power, which was frantically transforming his body and making it stronger and stronger. Clenching his fists, a power that even Su Yu himself found terrifying reverberated between his fists. With this punch, a level 6 deity would be smashed into pieces, wouldn't it? Even a level 5 deity would lose a layer of skin, even if he did not die. Su Yu's face lit up with joy. This kind of improvement in strength was quite exaggerated, jumping to a whole new level. At this moment, in terms of physical strength, Su Yu should be at the level of a level 5 deity. If he encountered Shui Zhongbao again, he could completely compete with him with his physical strength alone. Amidst his joy, Su Yu looked inside his abdomen. The 2 celestial spirits were constantly nourished and had now strengthened to the level of a late-stage prospective deity. Even so, Su Yu still showed no signs of breaking through to the level of a deity. Ever since he had cultivated several kinds of divine paths, there had been no signs of becoming a deity, which made Su Yu feel quite helpless. According to ordinary people, when the divine paths were cultivated to the extreme, divine tribulations would appear naturally. At this time, the divine paths would be ignited and the divine tribulations would be broken through to become a prospective deity. However, Su Yu was very special. Before his divine paths were ignited, the celestial spirits had already appeared, and he had already qualified to become a prospective deity. Moreover, as Su Yu's divine paths increased, there was no sign of the divine tribulations appearing. If he did not ignite his divine paths, Su Yu could not become a deity. Faintly, Su Yu felt as if some kind of will was suppressing him from becoming a deity. Thinking of the many divine tribulations that had appeared during the ordeals, Su Yu frowned deeply. Could it be that we're causing trouble again? Thinking of this, Su Yu's eyes were filled with indignation. That enormous will had been targeting Su Yu since the beginning of his cultivation, and it was still preventing Su Yu from becoming a deity today. I have even survived the divine tribulations. So how can it stop me from becoming a deity? Su Yu's eyes shone brightly, and he said coldly, "You can suppress a divine path cultivated to the extreme, and you can suppress 100, but what about 1,000 or 10,000 divine paths?" Su Yu had the remains of 10,000 deities in his hands, and with the help of the fragments of the rules, it was not a problem to comprehend the divine paths of the deities. "Fine. If you want to fight, then I will fight you to the end." Su Yu snorted coldly and immediately began to comprehend the divine paths left in the remains of 10,000 deities. Boom! A sudden clap of thunder came from the clear sky, and a white, misty lightning, hundreds of feet thick, fell directly on the Tianyu firm, smashing a 1,000-year-old ancient tree in the yard. Su Yu sneered. "I guessed right, it was you who caused trouble." The more he objected, the more Su Yu wanted to go against it. Closing his eyes, Su Yu quickly fell into meditation, comprehending the divine paths of the deities. The next evening, the setting sun shone on the evening glow. Su Yu slowly opened his eyes from his meditation, and the power of time around him dissipated like water. A touch of exhaustion and enlightenment flickered in Su Yu's eyes at the same time. The divine paths of 10 more deities, Su Yu said to himself. As long as Su Yu was given enough time, comprehending 10,000 divine paths would not be a problem. At this time, Su Yu sensed someone approaching from the outside world, and he opened the door. It was Yongye Chushue, who was waiting outside. There was also a touch of exhaustion in her eyes. Obviously, she had been secretly preparing for the banquet in the woods of drunken immortals. "It's time to go." Yongye Chushue's expression was cold, and her eyes were filled with cold light. Su Yu nodded and rushed to the woods of drunken immortals with her. The strong men of the Shui Empire who surrounded them followed them secretly and kept sending messages, reporting their location, lest they escape. The woods of drunken immortals was a small island in the lake, a leisure place dedicated to the royal family of the Shui Empire. Usually, it only received distinguished guests and was rarely opened. Now, in order to receive a distinguished guest like Yongye Chushue, it was specially opened, which showed how grand it was. For this, the royal family of the Shui Empire spread the news everywhere, making the trip of the princess known to the whole city. Su Yu and Princess Yongye came to the side of the lake. From afar, they could see many members of the royal family on the island, but no one came to meet them. Yongye Chushue was not angry at the deliberate neglect, because it was all within her expectations. However, neither Yongye Chushue nor Su Yu flew over. Chapter 1363. Yongye Chushue said, "It is said that this lake was formed by the tears of a dragon. It contains natural dragon power. If you fly over it, you will be shocked by the dragon power and lose the ability to fly. You will fall into the lake and drown. Only special boats can cross it." "Dragon power?" Su Yu smiled faintly. "However, I have made preparations to deal with the dragon power." Yongye Chushue took out 2 sachets and gave one to Su Yu. "This is the body of a divine dragon from the royal family. It contains enough dragon power to offset the dragon power in the lake. It should be no problem for you to cross the lake." Su Yu thought to himself that she had indeed prepared last night. After stuffing the sachet into his belt, Su Yu and Yongye Chushue immediately flew to the island in the lake. Sure enough, as soon as they flew over the lake, they felt the majesty of a divine dragon coming from the lake, which made Su Yu's mortal fairy's strength stagnant. However, the sachet at his waist also exuded a dragon power, which offset most of the dragon power in the lake. The stagnant feeling dissipated a lot. In this way, they flew over most of the lake in peace. However, just as they were about to reach the shore, a vague dragon roar suddenly rushed out of the lake. The dragon power contained in the dragon roar erupted and rushed straight at them. The mortal fairy's strength in Su Yu's body suddenly froze. His feet loosened, and he was about to fall. Yongye Chushue was not much better. After a moment of stalemate, her face tightened and her body fell. On the island, many princes and princesses looked at her with mocking eyes. If Yongye Chushue drowned like this, she would become a laughingstock. Su Yu's face was expressionless, and a layer of vague dragon scales appeared on the surface of his body. As soon as the dragon scales appeared, the surging dragon power lost its effect. Who could compete with the World Annihilation Dragon in terms of dragon power? Su Yu steadied his body in time. At the same time, he reached out and grasped Yongye Chushue's soft white hand, secretly stabilizing her. Yongye Chushue understood. She was carried by Su Yu as if nothing had happened, and they flew to the island side by side. In the eyes of the outside world, they just stopped in midair for a while. Not to mention falling into the lake. They did not even look embarrassed at all. After landing on the ground, Yongye Chushue withdrew her palm. Her cheeks were flushed, and the warmth of Su Yu's palm still lingered in her palm. Prince Yun looked on coldly from the sidelines, as if he had just noticed them. He led the princes and princesses forward and cupped his fists in a hypocritical manner. "I'm really sorry. We were busy with the arrangements and had to trouble your highness to cross the lake in person. What a sin," Yongye Chushue said calmly. "Now that you know you have sinned, you can atone for your sins with your death." The smile on Prince Yun's face froze, and he was stunned. The other princes and princesses were also stunned. No one had expected Yongye Chushue to say something like that. "I'm just kidding," Yongye Chushue said, casting a mischievous look at Su Yu. The muscles on Prince Yun's face twitched. They had failed to embarrass Yongye Chushue. Instead, it was Yongye Chushue who had made them uncomfortable. "Haha, princess, you're such an interesting person," Prince Yun laughed. The malice hidden in the depths of his smile deepened. Yongye Chushue looked around. "Is it interesting? Wouldn't a banquet be more interesting?" The princes and princesses sneered inwardly. It would indeed be interesting. The corners of Prince Yun's mouth curled up into a sinister smile, but he quickly concealed it. He said elegantly, "Of course. Before the banquet begins, why don't we have a show to liven things up?" Clap, clap. Prince Yun clapped his hands, and Shui Zhongbao walked out from among the princes, looking menacing. "Oh, what's so interesting about humans?" Yongye Chushue asked calmly. Prince Yun chuckled. "Of course there's nothing interesting about humans. But if it's a sparring match, of course it'll be interesting." Yongye Chushue's interest was piqued. "Sparring? I've heard that each of you princes has your own merits. I've been wanting to witness it for a long time. What's so interesting about a sparring match between the princes of the Xuan nation? Why don't you let your attendant participate?" Prince Yun said with a smile. Yongye Chushue said, "Prince Shui is a level 5 deity, while my friend is only a stage for mortal fairy. The difference is too great. What's the point of sparring?" Prince Yun smiled and said, "You don't have to be so modest, princess. This follower of yours, this friend of yours, is a practitioner who has mastered the cultivation of his physique. He may seem to be only a stage for mortal fairy, but the toughness of his physique is comparable to that of a level 6 deity. In terms of physique, he has a strong advantage." Yongye Chushue looked disinterested. "That's still boring. The difference between a level 5 and a level 6 deity is like the difference between clouds and mud. Besides, sparring matches are not just about physical strength. If this is the interesting sparring match you've prepared, I'm very disappointed." At this point, anyone with a discerning eye could see that Yongye Chushue was protecting Su Yu and preventing him from getting into danger. However, the princes of the Xuan nation had prepared meticulously. How could they allow their plan to fail? "Princess, you've misunderstood. This sparring match is not about strength, but courage and guts," Prince Yun said with a smile. Yongye Chushue asked, "What do you mean?" Prince Yun pointed to the lake. "There is a priceless Emperor-based saint artifact at the bottom of the lake, ranked 208th. It is called the Pearl of Divine Thunder. It was refined by the 9 emperors in the past by collecting the disastrous thunder of heaven and earth. If this item is activated, it can withstand any powerful attack of thunder. However, there is some dragon might in this lake. If you're unlucky, you'll encounter the dragon roar that the princess saw just now. The energy in your body will be frozen, and you'll drown. The sparring match this time is to enter the bottom of the lake. Whoever takes out the Pearl of Divine Thunder first will get to keep it." The group of princes chattered excitedly as if they, too, were envious of the treasure. Wow, such a good thing. I want to go down too. Really, Brother Yin is too generous, isn't he? Yeah, if I had known, I would have gone instead. Watching the princes and princesses putting on an act, Yongye Chushue sneered. She looked at Suyu and asked, "What do you think?" Suyu leaned against the trunk of a tree in boredom and said disdainfully, "It's just an emperor-based saint artifact that ranks in the 200s. It's just a piece of junk. Since the princes and princesses of the Shui Empire like it so much, let them compete and snatch it. I'm happy to oblige." All of a sudden, the princes and princesses fell silent, not saying a word. If he really asked them to go down, who would dare? The dangers in the lake were fatal to them. "Hey, didn't you say you want to go down just now? Why aren't you saying anything?" So you pointed to one of the princes. The prince's face turned pale, and he clutched his stomach, stammering. "Well, my stomach hurts, and I'm not in peak condition. I'm afraid I can't go down with anyone. What about you? Do you think your brother is generous because he wants this emperor-based saint artifact? Go down. I'll grant you your wish." The princess's face was flushed, and she retreated guiltily. You heard wrong. I didn't say that. And you, if you want to compete so badly, go ahead." So you pointed to another prince. The prince's forehead was covered in cold sweat, and he said angrily, I was just joking." Everyone who was pointed out by Suyu backed off. Who would risk their lives for an emperor-based saint artifact that ranked in the 200s? They had thought that Suyu was just a follower who had never seen the world, and that any emperor-based saint artifact would be enough to tempt him. Who would have thought that this fellow would look at them with disdain, which put them in a difficult position? When he finished, Suyu looked at Prince Yin. "See? It's just a piece of junk. Your younger brothers and sisters don't care about it, and yet you're using it to fool me, a distinguished guest. It's too shabby. If you want me to go down and test my courage, at least bring me something decent." Upon hearing that, Prince Yun's face fell, and he thought to himself, "Who do you think you are to call yourself a distinguished guest? Our target is Yongye Chushue." However, now that things had come to this brat would not go down without a better emperor-based saint artifact. "All right, I've been rude. I'll prepare another emperor-based saint artifact." As he spoke, Prince Yin was about to take it out, but Suyu said, "Don't bring out the trashy stuff that ranks below the 100s. Yongye Wuheng's hand froze, and he slowly put down the emperor-based saint artifact that ranked 180th between his fingers, a mocking smile on his face. The rest of the princes and princesses blushed, obviously infuriated, because the artifacts they had in their hands were all trashy stuff, ranked below the 100s. Even Yongye Chushue could not help but smile. She thought to herself, he really dares to ask for it. Which of the emperor-based saint artifacts in the top 100 is not a rare treasure of heaven and earth, controlled by various great influences? Even the Shui nation of the Northern Territory only has 5, and 2 of them were snatched away by Suyu. Now he dares to ask for another one? Isn't he just trying to piss them off? Prince Yin suppressed his murderous intent. He did have an emperor-based saint artifact in the top 100. However, how could he be willing to hand it over to a lowly person like Suyu to fight for it? The rest of the princes and princesses exchanged glances. They had planned to toy with them for a while, but now it seemed that the situation was completely out of their control, so they might as well kill them directly. At that moment, Shui Zhongbao walked over and glared at Suyu with hidden hatred. He whispered to Prince Yin, "Why don't you agree to it? He's going to die at the bottom of the lake anyway. I'll help you fish this emperor-based saint artifact out again." After giving it some thought, Prince Yin agreed with him. They were all going to die today, so what was the point of getting the emperor-based saint artifact? Therefore, a smile reappeared on his face, and he took out an emerald cloud-colored flute. This is an emperor-based saint artifact that ranks 50th, the true sky flute of heavenly melody. Once it is played, it can produce the best celestial sound in the world, which can break all sound wave cultivation techniques in the world. Moreover, it is the only treasure among the top 100 emperor-based saint artifacts that can resist sorcery energy. Suyu's eyes lit up when he heard that. An emperor-based saint artifact that ranked 50th was pretty good. Now this is interesting. All right, I accept the challenge. So you said. Prince Yin flashed a genial smile. With a wave of his hand, he tossed the true sky flute of heavenly melody into the center of the lake. He said with a smile, "The rules are the same. Whoever retrieves, it will get the emperor-based saint artifact." Shui Zhongbao laughed. "Is there a need to say it? Of course it's mine." After that, he threw a provocative look at Su Yu and jumped into the lake first. Su Yu was not in a hurry. He took off his coat patiently and walked slowly to the lakeside. Prince Yin frowned. Shui Zhongbao couldn't stay at the bottom of the lake for long. If Su Yu didn't go down, how was Shui Zhongbao going to make his move? "Aren't you afraid that Shui Zhongbao will get it before you do?" Prince Yin asked. Su Yu replied with a chuckle. "What's there to be afraid of? He'll be waiting for me." Chapter 1364. A slight uneasiness lingered in his heart. Pudong. What made him feel slightly relieved was that Su Yu finally stopped dawdling and jumped into the lake. A smile tugged at the corner of Prince Yun's mouth as he asked Yongye Chushua, "Who do you think will win, princess?" Yongye Chushua said without hesitation, "Su Yu, of course." Prince Yun sneered inwardly. Did he really think that it was as simple as fishing? With Shui Zhongbao's strength, killing Su Yu at the bottom of the lake would be a piece of cake. Yongye Chushue, on the other hand, thought that since Su Yu could remain unscathed under the dragon's roar just now, he must have some extraordinary treasures with him. Therefore, he might not be defeated by Shui Zhongbao. Su Yu dove into the lake and quickly disappeared. Everyone could only wait in silence. Not long after Su Yu dived into the lake, an endless and weak dragon power swept over and froze his mortal fairy strength. Then, scales appeared on Su Yu's arm, and the dragon's might no longer affected him. In this way, Su Yu is no different from being at the bottom of an ordinary lake. Before long, Su Yu came to the center of the lake and found a pearl that was emitting thunder and lightning. It was about the size of a fist. It was the divine thunder pearl, an object that could withstand the divine thunder of heaven and earth. After all, it was an emperor-based saint artifact, so you certainly would not waste it. He took the divine thunder pearl away with a suction force. At this moment, a tyrannical aura came from behind. Turning his head to look, he saw that it was Shui Zhongbao lurking behind Su Yu's back, launching a fatal sneak attack while he was collecting the divine thunder pearl. "Kid, you still don't know, right? This is your grave." Having learned his lesson, Shui Zhongbao did not use the meteor hammer again. Instead, he relied on his superior physical strength to deal a fatal blow to Su Yu. Su Yu revealed a faint smile. "What a coincidence. I think so too." As soon as he finished speaking, he twisted his body, and his entire body transformed into a black dragon that was 200 zhang long, and he charged forward. Puff, caught off guard, Shui Zhongbao was sent flying by the black dragon. He spat out a mouthful of blood, and half of his body was crushed. His heart was overwhelmed with shock. The last time they fought, Su Yu did not have this kind of power. After a day, he had become so terrifying. Run. Shui Zhongbao was a man who was meticulous even though he was rough. He was not always reckless. The moment they clashed, Shui Zhongbao knew that he was the one who fell into the trap. As he fled, his broken body frantically healed, and in 2 to 3 breaths, he had recovered by more than half. At the same time, he swam quickly to the surface of the lake. As long as Prince Yin saw him, Su Yu would not dare to do anything to him. However, just as he was about to leap out of the water, a black shadow blocked his head, and a huge dragon claw slammed down. Bang! Shui Zhongbao fell back into the water. His heart sank, and he raised his head and shouted, "Su Yu, this is just a spar. Are you trying to kill me? Learn from each other?" Su Yu laughed mischievously. Shui Zhongbao was frightened by this smile. He hurriedly said, Just now, it was just a slip of the tongue. I was just angry about that day and wanted to teach you a lesson. I didn't mean anything else. After all, Princess Chushue is here. How would I dare to kill you? I swear, this is really just a spar." In order to survive, Shui Zhongbao couldn't care less about his dignity. However, the hatred in his heart had increased exponentially. Once he went up, he would kill Su Yu immediately. Su Yu had hidden his strength too well. "All right, I believe you are just trying to learn from each other, Suyu said after thinking for a moment. Shui Zhongbao secretly heaved a sigh of relief and sighed. You will pay a heavy price for your naivety. However, the next moment, Suyu said, however, you can learn from each other, and I will kill mine. There is no conflict between us. As he spoke, a dragon claw slammed down, and Shui Zhongbao's body, which had yet to recover, was on the verge of collapse. Shui Zhongbao was shocked. Suyu, you dare to kill me? Suyu's dragon eyes were indifferent, like a real dragon looking down on the common people. He said placidly, you are wrong. What I want to kill is not you, but all of you. Bang! The dragon claw pressed down hard, and Shui Zhongbao's body was torn apart. A pure soul escaped from the physical body and fled out of the lake in fear. Originally, with the speed of the soul traversing the void, it could have escaped to Prince Yun's side by teleportation. Unfortunately, the dragon's might in the lake limited its speed, making it even slower than its body. Suyu returned to his human form and smiled faintly. A crack appeared between his brows. Soul Devourer. Creak. Shui Zhongbao's soul, filled with terror and remorse, was completely devoured by Suyu, becoming a tonic that nourished Suyu's soul energy. This was the soul of a level 5 peak deity. Even if he could only absorb 1/10 of its essence, it was still a great tonic for Suyu. Suyu's soul energy increased tremendously, and he broke through to level 5. Once again gaining powerful soul energy, Suyu's senses were even more astonishing. He could even vaguely capture the source of the gaze that was watching him. As if sensing that he had been exposed, the owner of the gaze stopped monitoring him immediately. Haha, I'll settle the score with you soon. Suyu snorted coldly. Without the feeling of being watched, he felt much more relaxed. After getting rid of Shui Zhongbao, Suyu found the true sky flute of heavenly melody without much effort. After caressing it, a soft flute tune drifted out of the hole. When it entered his ears, Suyu's entire soul trembled slightly, as if it had been baptized. It was extremely comfortable. Suyu was secretly surprised. This is a good thing indeed. If the leaked sound of the flute is already so powerful when it is actually played, it indeed has the power to break through all sound wave cultivation techniques. It is also entirely possible to restrain the waves of sorcery energy. Prince Yun has really given me a great gift. In the outside world, Yongye Chushue and the princes and princesses of the Shui nation stood by the lake, paying close attention to the changes in the lake. Soon after, muffled sounds came from the lake, and the water became murky. They knew then that a fight had taken place under the water. As for the outcome of the fight, the princes of the Shui nation secretly sneered. From time to time, they glanced at Yongye Chushue, who was all alone, with fiery looks on their faces. Soon, she would become their plaything. However, they were slightly puzzled by the fact that a few breaths before the end of the fight, a pitch-black shadow of a dragon vaguely appeared on the surface of the lake. It disappeared in a flash, and many of the princes and princesses thought it was just an illusion. Fortunately, the commotion soon subsided. They believed that Shui Zhongbao had finished off Suyu completely. Prince Yun put on a fake smile and said, Princess Chushue, although this is just a friendly match, the lake is dangerous after all. If your friend doesn't make it to the surface, please restrain your grief. Yongye Chushue looked calm, but deep down, she was extremely nervous. She could easily guess what the commotion was about. In terms of the strength of both sides, the possibility of Suyu being killed was as high as 99%. Splash! All of a sudden, the sound of water splashing was heard. The princes and princesses were overjoyed. It was over. However, when they saw who appeared on the surface of the water, all the princes and princesses were stunned. On the other hand, Yongye Chushue heaved a huge sigh of relief. She loosened her clenched fists, which were soaked with sweat. Exhausted, Suyu swam ashore. Yongye Chushue helped him up, and she immediately channeled divine energy into him to restore his strength. Prince Yun's eyes turned cold. Why did you come up first? Suyu's face was pale as he asked him. How can you be so sure that Shui Zhongbao came up first? Prince Yun hesitated. Of course, he knew that Shui Zhongbao would kill Su Yu at the bottom of the lake, but he couldn't say that out loud. With a snort, he asked, "Where is Shui Zhongbao?" Su Yu said, "You ask me? Who am I supposed to ask?" Prince Yun's murderous intentions were surging, and he was about to lose control. "Brother Yun, don't worry. If he could come up, how could Brother Shui?" A princess said. The rest of the princes and princesses were relieved as well, thinking that Shui Zhongbao must have been careless and let him escape. He might still be looking for Su Yu at the bottom of the lake. Among them, only Shui Xiaoman had reservations. She stared at Su Yu, feeling an ominous feeling in her heart. Perhaps Shui Zhongbao would never come up. 10 minutes had passed, and the lake was calm. Half an hour had passed, and there was still no movement in the lake. 2 hours had passed, and the faces of the princes and princesses finally changed. Even if Shui Zhongbao was still looking for Su Yu, 2 hours had passed, and he should have shown himself. The longer Prince Yun waited, the more he felt that something was wrong. He looked at Su Yu coldly. "Why hasn't he come up yet?" Su Yu shrugged. "You have to ask him. Maybe he has fallen asleep at the bottom of the lake." Boom! Prince Yun unleashed his aura, stirring up a cloud of dust. Yongye Chushua said placidly, "What is Prince Yun doing? Killing someone?" Prince Yun looked at her coldly and gradually withdrew his aura. He said, "I just want to know what happened at the bottom of the lake just now, and what caused such a huge commotion." Upon hearing that, Su Yu looked bewildered. "I don't know. I was startled by the huge commotion, and that's why I swam back." "You're lying. That commotion was clearly," Prince Yun said coldly. Su Yu's eyes were calm. "What was that commotion? Please tell me, Prince Yun." Prince Yun was speechless. Was he supposed to tell Su Yu that it was Shui Zhongbao who was attacking him? Nothing. That commotion could have been caused by some strange beast at the bottom of the lake. Prince Yun's tone was indescribably gloomy. "Give me a moment." Prince Yun waited for another half an hour, but to no avail, he entered the water himself. After half a cup of tea's time, accompanied by a soft splash, Prince Yun returned, dripping wet. His long, wet hair covered most of his face, making him look even more somber. In his hand, he held half of Shui Zhongbao's corpse. The hideous wounds caused by the sharp claws were clearly visible. Brother Shui Zhongbao. What killed Brother Shui Zhongbao? Who did it? It's Su Yu. It must be Su Yu. Shui Zhongbao's death caused an uproar among the princes and princesses. Su Yu glanced at them calmly and said indifferently, "Everyone, you can eat whatever you want, but you can't say whatever you want. Do you have any proof that I did it?" The princes and princesses stared at Su Yu with hatred, their murderous, intense flickering. "Ha! You're so sure that I'm a murderer, as if you knew that I would definitely fight Shui Zhongbao. Could it be that you're all gods who can predict the future?" As soon as he said that, the princes and princesses immediately hid their strange expressions and avoided Su Yu's gaze. "Look at the wound. It's obvious that it was caused by the strange beast in the lake. You're going to blame it on me, aren't you?" Su Yu asked coldly. Hence, the princes and princesses dared not look Su Yu in the eye. However, the anger in their hearts burned even more fiercely. Su Yu was the one who killed Shui Zhongbao, yet he questioned them with such confidence that they couldn't doubt him. This feeling of grievance was completely different from what they had imagined. Su Yu, at that moment, Prince Yun spoke, his voice extremely somber. "Where is my Emperor-based Saint artifact, the true sky flute of heavenly melody?" Chapter 1365. "Of course it's in my hands." Su Yu did not deny it. With a flip of his palm, the true sky flute of heavenly melody appeared in his palm. Prince Yun's pupils constricted slightly. He wanted to speak, but stopped on second thought. Su Yu said calmly, "I have to remind Prince Yun that according to the rules you set, the true sky flute of heavenly melody belongs to whoever finds it. Now it's mine. Please change your tone, Prince Yun. It's not yours, it's mine." The princes and princesses were furious. Now that they thought about it, it was all Su Yu's plot. He had concealed his strength and made them lower their guard. Prince Yun had carelessly used his most important true sky flute of heavenly melody as a wager. Not only had Shui Zhongbao been harmed, but the precious Emperor-based Saint artifact had also become Su Yu's. What made them feel even more indignant was that they knew the truth but could not bring it up. Prince Yun stared at Su Yu, his eyes flickering. Finally, he calmed down. I'm a man of my word. Since you retrieved it from the bottom of the lake, it's naturally yours. Upon hearing that, Yongye Chushue, who had been keeping her guard up, heaved a sigh of relief. Fortunately, she did not make things difficult for him. At least, now is not the time. We are saddened by Shui Zhongbao's accident. My condolences, everyone, Yongye Chushue said expressionlessly. Prince Yin forced a smile and nodded stiffly. His death will not affect our banquet. Princess and Su Yu, please take a seat. Under his guidance, they came to the center of the island. 20 tree stumps of the same size surrounded a broken 1,000-year-old tomb, several meters in diameter. The cross-section was smooth, just the right size for a table. At the moment, the ancient tomb table was filled with various spiritual fruits and drinks. The spiritual energy was rich, and they were obviously valuable treasures. Prince Yun invited them to take a seat while he sat at the head of the table, acting as the host for the day. Shui Xiaoman sat down as well. Looking at Su Yu, who looked calm and composed, she felt increasingly uneasy. After a moment of hesitation, she said telepathically, Brother Yun, Su Yu has the violet gold rings of Yin Yang, the divine feather of frost, and the peacock plume. He's not easy to deal with. I think Shui Zhongbao died because of this. There is no need to continue the banquet. Let's strike now and eliminate him with everyone's strength. Prince Yun's expression was calm, but he responded secretly. He snorted. Do you think I'm trying to kill you? Isn't it because you lost your precious treasure? If we clash head-on, what if he destroys the treasure? Among the 3 lost treasures, one of them was an Emperor-based Saint artifact. It was meant for Prince Yun's use, but Prince Yun reluctantly lent it to her after Shui Xiaoman pleaded for it. Who would have thought that it would be snatched away? Even now, the matter of it being lost was still hidden from the royal family. If the royal family found out about it, neither he nor Shui Xiaoman would have a good time. They were worried that Su Yu would destroy or abandon the item if they were to confront him head-on. Hence, they had chosen to assassinate him. Shui Xiaoman lowered her head in shame. Su Yu caught this scene out of the corner of his eye, and an obscure smile flashed across the corners of his mouth. Prince Yun looked at Yongye Chushue with a smile. These 21 divine trees are called the soul-reaching wood, which is somewhat related to the soul-stabilizing wood. They can absorb the souls of the world to nourish themselves. Every 10 years, these tree stumps will brew sweet and mellow fairy wine, which contains rich energy. After drinking it, it has an extraordinary effect on nourishing the soul. Ordinary people will be dead drunk after drinking a drop of it. That's how the woods of drunken immortals got its name. Yongye Chushue nodded slightly. These 21 soul-reaching wood were very famous in the Empire of Darkness. The fairy wine brewed from them was also a rare brew in the world. Even the Empire of Darkness received no more than 10 drops of it as a tribute every year, and all of them were enjoyed by the monarch alone. In all these years, Yongye Chushue had only taken the diluted spiritual liquid once. The nourishing effect on the soul was indeed amazing. However, just as Prince Yun had said, the wine was extremely intoxicating. Back then, she couldn't withstand a drop of the fairy wine that was diluted to 1/10, and she fell into a coma for 3 days and 3 nights. Rumor had it that even Yongye Juyong didn't dare to drink too much. 1 drop at a time was the upper limit. However, what the world doesn't know is that the most delicious fairy wine isn't the ones on the market, but the ones hidden in the soul-reaching wood. Prince Yun said with a mysterious smile. The rest of the princes and princesses licked their tongues, looking very eager. If they hadn't taken advantage of the woods of drunken immortals today, it would have been extremely difficult for them to taste the wine. Princess Yongye, Su Yu, as the saying goes, it's better to come at the right time than to come early. The fairy wine is only collected once every 10 years. You can't taste the extracted wine, but you can drink the original fairy wine. With a wave of Prince Yun's hand, 21 thin metal tubes appeared on the table, neatly arranged in front of the 21 people. Each tube was crafted from the materials of the soul-reaching wood. Everyone, time waits for no man. Let's start drinking, Prince Yun said with a smile. He picked up the thin tube in front of him and inserted it into the 1,000-year-old wooden table. A strange scene ensued. The thin tube came into contact with the table, and layers of tiny roots extended from the bottom of the tube, connecting with the table as one. Then, with the thin tube in the corner of Prince Yun's mouth, he sucked gently. From the roots inside the table, layers of viscous emerald crystalline spiritual liquid flowed out and was sucked into Prince Yun's mouth along the thin tube. A strange fragrance leaked out. The fragrance was intoxicating, soothing one's soul and mind. When the rest of the princes and princesses saw it, they couldn't hold back their hunger and thirst. One after another, they followed suit and drank the original fairy wine from a tree stump. In an instant, more than 20 streams of fairy wine overflowed, and the intoxicating fragrance filled the entire island. Even without tasting it himself, Suyu could feel the enhancement of his soul just by smelling the lingering fragrance of the wine in the air. The spiritual liquid of the soul-reaching wood was indeed extraordinary. Suyu's eyes were filled with interest, but he had no intention of giving it a try. Young Yachushua looked at Suyu, secretly admiring him. She said, "The fairy wine on the market must have evaporated in the process of extraction, so its effect is far inferior to the original fairy wine. Even so, the fairy wine on the market can make one sleep for 10 days and 10 nights with just one sip. You can imagine the effect of this original fairy wine. Don't be fooled by their ease of drinking. They must have been prepared to dissolve the alcohol in the fairy wine. You were right not to follow them." As she spoke, Yonya Chushua took out 2 pitch-black pills from her sleeves and handed one to Suyu. "Keep it in your mouth to absorb the alcohol in the fairy wine. This way, you won't be affected when you swallow it." She was indeed well prepared. Suyu took it, put it in his mouth, and tried to take a sip. A cool and refreshing feeling filled his mouth, but his soul had already fallen into an ethereal state. Suyu had devoured souls 3 times, and his soul had grown too rapidly, causing it to be incompatible with his physical body. Under the nourishment of this spiritual liquid, Suyu's soul quickly fused with his body, eliminating the traces of hidden dangers without a trace. Suyu was secretly delighted. This trip had not been in vain. However, as Yongye Chushua had said, although the fairy wine was good, its intoxicating power was not just for show. After a short while, Suyu felt dizzy and lightheaded. What a strong, intoxicating power! Suyu exclaimed. Even though he had taken the elixir, it still had such an effect. Wait, something's wrong. Suyu suddenly realized that something was amiss before he lost consciousness. Yongye Chushua had also drunk the spiritual liquid, but she looked normal and did not seem to be drunk at all. She had also taken the elixir, but why was there such a big difference? His eyes flickered, and he quietly glanced at the rest of the people present. The dozen princes seemed to be enjoying the elixir, but under Su Yu's transparent eye, he could clearly see that there was nothing in their tubes. Only he and Yongye Chushua were drinking. What made Su Yu's pupils shrink slightly was that in the veins under the tree stump, besides the turquoise spiritual liquid, there was also a faint golden liquid. It was odorless and odorless, mixed in with the turquoise liquid, and was impossible to detect. Something was wrong. Su Yu pretended to be still drinking, secretly observing everyone's actions. Soon, Su Yu's eyes flashed, and he found that there was a trace of golden powder left in Prince Yun's palm. Seeing this, Su Yu sneered. Did they add this intoxicating substance into the spiritual liquid and let Su Yu absorb it without noticing and then pass out on the spot? Moreover, it seemed that they had discussed it in advance. Once Su Yu started drinking, they would stop at the same time to prevent themselves from drinking the golden liquid by mistake. Su Yu found it funny as he looked at them pretending to be enjoying themselves, as well as their drunken looks. "All right, since you like to pretend, I'll give you a little surprise." Su Yu chuckled inwardly, but his face revealed that he was slightly drunk. He wiped his mouth and laughed foolishly. "This is really good wine. I have never tasted such good wine in my life. I must drink another mouthful." When he finished, he lowered his head and sucked on the thin tube. However, this time, he did not drink it. Instead, he spat some liquid into the tube. The liquid entered the tree stump and quickly flowed along the veins, covering the entire interior of the tree stump. The princes and princesses, who did not know what was going on, exchanged cold glances. After absorbing so much golden liquid, Suyu was almost done. The corners of Prince Yun's mouth curled into an imperceptible sneer. "Haha, since Brother Su likes it, you might as well have a few more sips. After today, it won't be so easy to drink again," Prince Yun said with a double meaning. Suyu's face was already showing signs of drunkenness, and his eyes were starting to lose focus. He was quite drunk, and it was only a matter of time before he fell asleep. He shouted drunkenly, "Let's rest for a while before we drink. You can go first." Prince Yun said with a smile, "Brother Su, you are a guest. How can we drink when you haven't had a good drink?" In his drunken state, Suyu had some doubts. "Why do you have to wait until I drink? Is there something wrong with the wine?" The princes and princesses were all shocked when they were exposed in a single sentence. Prince Yun's expression remained unchanged. He smiled faintly. "In that case, let's all drink and enjoy ourselves." As he spoke, he stroked the underside of the table with his palm. The golden liquid contained in the veins was all withdrawn. The rest of the princes and princesses received a signal from Prince Yun to confirm that the spiritual liquid was safe. Only then did they drink with relief. Yongye Chushue took a sip and could not help but lower her head to drink. Chapter 1366. Yongye Chushue's cheeks flushed with anger. She glared at Suyu, as if to ask why he was touching her leg. Suyu pretended to be drunk, but the way he looked at Yongye Chushue was exceptionally clear. Her eyes darted from side to side. Yongye Chushue was intelligent, and she finally understood what Suyu meant. There was something wrong with the wine, and she immediately raised her head. "Princess, are you not going to drink anymore?" Prince Yin was suspicious. Yongye Chushue rubbed her forehead and smiled bitterly. "The fairy wine deserves its reputation. I'm a little tipsy after just one sip." Prince Yin was slightly puzzled. He had only poisoned Suyu. How could Yongye Chushue be poisoned as well? Could it be that the golden liquid was not controlled properly, and part of it flowed towards Yongye Chushue? However, this was a small problem, as long as Suyu was poisoned. "Haha. In that case, Princess, please take a break," Prince Yin said with a faint smile. He seized the time to drink a few mouthfuls of the non-poisonous liquid. Yongye Chushue smiled stiffly. She put down her right hand, grabbed Suyu's hand on her thigh, and threw it away as if she had been electrocuted. She glared at Suyu viciously from the corner of her eye. Suyu smiled, the faint fragrance of her thigh lingering in his palm. He could not help but recall the beautiful, jade-like body in the lake of the 7 poisons demonic toad's venom, and his mind swayed. The thought only flashed past his mind, and Suyu suppressed his feelings. He was secretly ashamed. Drinking is bad for one's health. "Brother Su, why don't you have a few more sips?" Prince Yin stopped drinking and said. The rest of the princes and princesses seemed to be savoring the wine as if nothing had happened, but in fact, they had all stopped and were pretending to enjoy it. Suyu glanced with his transparent eye. The golden liquid in the tree stump was more than 3 times more than before. They were preparing to get Suyu drunk in one go. "Haha, all right, I'll take a few more sips. I hope Prince Yin won't feel bad about it. I've always been a good drinker." Suyu belched. Although Prince Yin felt bad about the fairy wine, how much more could a drunk man drink? "Haha, Brother Su, what are you talking about? I invited you here today to drink to your heart's content. Why would I worry about you drinking too much? Drink as much as you want." Suyu praised, straightforward. "Then this Su won't stand on ceremony." As he spoke, Suyu put the thin tube in his mouth and started sucking it happily. At the same time, he placed his right palm under the table and placed it on his chest. The spiritual liquid that Suyu had just absorbed was sucked out of his body by the Milky Way fine sand before it could fuse with his limbs and bones. The golden liquid was completely removed, leaving behind a pure emerald green liquid. Suyu then guided it into a giant jade plate that was as big as a wash basin. Young Chushiwe was worried about Suyu. When she looked over, her eyes almost popped out of their sockets. She was not surprised that Suyu could separate the spiritual liquid. Instead, she was surprised that Suyu had prepared such a big vessel. Was he planning to take all the spiritual liquid in the forest of drunken immortals for 10 years? Young Chushiwe took a few deep breaths and pretended that nothing had happened. However, she kept glancing at the fairy wine that was gradually hiding out of the corner of her eyes. Her eyes were burning, and she thought to herself, will this guy share some with me? Tempering my soul will be very beneficial for me when I try to break through to level 2 deity. No, I'm going to confiscate them all later. Who asked me to be a princess? Watching Suyu take a few sips, Prince Yun and the others still had smiles on their faces. However, after half an incense stick's worth of time, Suyu was still inhaling, and there was no sign of him fainting. The smiles on their faces were gone. Why hasn't this guy fainted yet? He has taken so much. Even if he has the antidote, he should be reaching his limit, right? Prince Yin was a little distressed. Although the princes and princesses could hold a banquet in the forest of drunken immortals, there was a limit to the amount of fairy wine they could take in. If they took too much, they would be severely punished by their father. Prince Yun restrained his emotions and comforted them. Don't get too worked up, it should be soon. However, a whole incense stick's worth of time had passed, and Suyu was still inhaling. The faces of all the princes and princesses fell. Even Prince Yun's expression was extremely unpleasant. What the hell is going on? Even if the poison hasn't taken effect, the emperors of the 4 great empires would not be able to take in the fairy wine alone. They would probably be drunk on the ground. Why does he look perfectly fine? He has taken almost 30% already, hasn't he? If he continues, he will be sucked dry. Prince Yin smiled stiffly. Brother Su, slow down. Drinking too much is bad for your health. Unexpectedly, Yongye Chushiwe, who had her mind set on sharing the spoils, said, Prince Yin said just now that he could drink as much as he wanted, didn't he? Prince Yin smiled sheepishly. I was just reminding him not to drink too fast. Gurgle. As soon as he mentioned it, Su Yu's rate of absorption suddenly sped up several times, and the liquid in the tree stump gurgled. The princes and princesses were as anxious as monkeys whose buttocks were on fire. They were anxious but did not dare to make sound. All they could do was watch as the spiritual liquid in the tree stump was sucked away. However, as Su Yu's face grew redder and redder, and he looked like he was about to faint, they decided to hold it in. They held it in for another half an incense stick's worth of time. Sizzle. Finally, the sound of the tree stump being sucked dry could be heard. The last drop of fairy wine spiritual liquid was sucked into Su Yu's stomach. To the princes and princesses' astonishment, Su Yu, who had drunk an enormous amount of fairy wine, did not faint even though his face was flushed and he could not even sit properly. In all the years that the Northern Shui nation had been in charge of the Soul-Reaching Wood, this was the first time they had encountered such a bizarre incident. A person who had drunk 10 years' worth of fairy wine did not faint. Patting his belly, Su Yu burped and said drunkenly, "Good wine, good wine." At the same time, he put away the basin-sized utensil without batting an eyelid. Prince Yun and the others were so focused on Su Yu that they did not notice that the real fairy wine had been moved away by Su Yu. Is there any more? I want to drink. I want to drink. Su Yu muttered a few words and finally closed his eyes and fainted. The princes and princesses' faces did not look any better after Su Yu fainted. If this was the price they had to pay, wasn't the price too high? How are they going to explain this to their father after drinking fairy wine for 10 years? Just thinking about it made them want to commit suicide. How would things turn out this way? However, no matter what, Su Yu had fainted, and there was no longer any suspense about the safe retrieval of the Emperor-based Saint artifact. They could rest assured. The princes and princesses, who had been suppressed for a long time, gradually revealed the viciousness of revenge. Several of the princes no longer concealed their greedy eyes. They stared at Yongye Chushiwe's graceful figure, their eyes burning with passion. Yongye Chushiwe raised her brows and scolded, "How dare you?" However, having been exposed, they no longer had the slightest scruple. "You are the one who is presumptuous." Prince Yun's gentleness and elegance disappeared, replaced by anger. The aura of a level 4 martial artist was no longer concealed. It was released completely, enveloping Yongye Chushue. Yongye Chushue's pretty face was cold. She slammed her palm on the table and bellowed coldly. "Are you trying to rebel?" Prince Yun put on a fake smile. "Congratulations, you are right." "What?" Despite Su Yu's speculation, Yongye Chushue was still shocked to hear the other party admit it. She said angrily, "The royal family of Yongye has always been generous to you. When have we ever mistreated you? Why are you rebelling? I don't believe it. Let the king of the northern Xuan nation say it to his face." Looking at Yongye Chushue's panic-stricken face, Prince Yun finally vented all the grievances he had suffered that night. He sneered coldly. "You want to see my father? Sure. I will take your head and let you ask him in person." Since things had come to this, Yongye Chushue let go of her last shred of hope. Everything was as Su Yu had predicted. The northern Xuan nation was going to rebel. Tonight's banquet at the Woods of Drunken Immortals was a historic event. They would use her head and her blood to announce that the northern Xuan nation would leave the Empire of Darkness and join the heaven-defying empire from now on. She closed her eyes gently. When she opened them again, Yongye Chushue's eyes were cold and solemn, as if they were covered with ice and snow. "Everyone has the right to punish the rebels." Yongye Chushue took out a short sword engraved with inscriptions from her sleeve, exuding a shocking deterrent force. Prince Yun was a little fearful. The 38th Emperor-based Saint artifact, the heavenly patterned dragon sword. It is said that it was forged from the horn of a divine dragon comparable to the 9 emperors. Its power is amazing. Yongye Chushue held the dragon sword in her hand, her murderous intent rising. "You didn't expect this, did you? This sword has been secretly in my hand for a long time. I don't think you would have guessed that I have known your purpose all along. I came to the banquet tonight to give you one last chance." Unexpectedly, Prince Yun smiled sinisterly. "No, I knew it. That's why I prepared another gift for you." Palm of the Great Buddha. All of a sudden, an angry bellow came from the sky above the Woods of Drunken Immortals. A ferocious-looking monk, clad in a kasaya and wearing a skull necklace around his neck, was bathed in a golden Buddha's light. He weaved a seal with his left hand and formed a palm with his right hand. The surging Buddha's light formed a huge palm print, which smashed down. The power of this palm print was at the level of a level 4 deity, comparable to that of Prince Yun. The only difference was that the ferocious monk's attack was a sneak attack, which Yongye Chushue could hardly guard against. Yongye Chushue was shocked. The Grand State Master of the Northern Xuan Nation, Azura. In the blink of an eye, Yongye Chushue raised the heavenly patterned dragon sword and thrust it down. Heavenly patterned dragon. Roar. There seemed to be a dragon's roar piercing through the sky. A beam of pure divine light rushed out of the heavenly patterned dragon sword and shattered the incoming palm print of Buddha's light. However, before the attack was completed, Prince Yun's eyes flashed, and he arrived as fast as lightning. His palms, which were as heavy as mountains, hit Yongye Chushue's abdomen. Puff! Under the tremendous force, Yongye Chushue spat out a mouthful of blood and was sent flying backward. Yongye Chushue's body was severely injured after the consecutive sneak attacks. "Take another blow from me." In the sky, Azura's face was ferocious. He launched another palm of the Great Buddha. Prince Yin sneered. "Don't kill her, State Master. My brothers are all waiting to enjoy Princess Chushue's noble body."